Smiling dog. God. I don't think I can do it. I was gonna try to like show this guy the funny voice to try and mimic, but they seem they seem a little out of it. Probably high on some shit in real life. Uh, how I get in trouble. Scrolling through random fucking Discords. Open up the wrong one. See some whack fucking meme get banned off Twitch. Saturday night's alright. It's always got people.
No, I play Wingman with my buddy.
Are you guys playing
I
RuneScape?
thought you play like the MG or the fun servers.
Yeah, we're
Fun
playing
underscore
RuneScape.
whatever.
Nice.
We're all playing RuneScape, boy.
Yeah, I'm
Like
trying to figure out how
AFK?
the. No,
No, we're not AFK.
Oh, okay.
Trying to figure out how to fucking make enough GP for an
I need to kill Warcraft 2 more times, and I already died once because I fucking Googled something for this guy over here.
Mike,
Wow.
tell me how the fuck to sell to make money so I can
Alright, so do you want fast method or semi-fast
yeah,
method?
dude, I can give these items back.
Alright, what's your melee stats?
Oh shit, I'm dying to heat. Oh god.
Oh,
Yeah,
wait.
what's
Oh,
What are you,
fuck.
a baby?
what's your melee stats?
Hold on, I'm dying to the heat. Hold on.
Okay,
You don't
TP,
die that quickly. You lose like 5 HP each tick, and
No,
it's
I
like
lost
once a
like
minute.
10. I lost like 10 HP.
Oh my,
No.
oh my. Go into the cave and should we find
Yeah,
Well,
it?
you don't-
I used the necklace of passage to get there because broke boy can't afford the fucking shanty pass.
It's 100 GP for each pass. It's nothing.
Dude, that's a lot of money if it adds up. Like,
Bro, yeah, that I
Uh-huh,
can't
Yeah,
afford
what
it.
if you-
50 coins for a
what if you
pass?
bought
Like, holy
1,000 of
shit.
those, huh? That's 50k.
Yeah, what if you bought 2,000
That's
of them?
yeah, exactly. You know how much money
What if
that is?
100,000? That's
So I
50, fucking
50
5
K
billion.
is like
That
my
not,
whole
that's not
bank
even
right
possible,
now.
dude. That much gold doesn't even exist in RuneScape.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
Yeah,
No,
let's
dude,
not
there's
be
people with a
ridiculous here.
trillion.
Dude, we don't want your knowledge over here.
This guy's,
I mean,
dude,
if you're gonna be
Caliphate,
ridiculous,
you're
I'm just gonna
fucking
leave. But
85.
No, wait, go to the right. When you enter that shit, just go to the right.
Dude, they're 85.
Go to the right!
So
Ah,
I'll
kill the
fucking go to
workers.
your right.
Kill the workers. They're like level 20.
yeah.
Sure, it says to kill flight workers. Okay,
Caliphite?
Calfight.
Caliphite.
Calfight. Calfight. Alright, come on, repeat after me.
Are they gonna
Calfight.
mass attack me? They better not mass
Caliphite? No,
attack.
Caliphite's a thing.
No, yeah,
Caliphite?
they're not aggressive because you don't have a cannon, but I guess you're only killing like a few. It's not too bad.
Killing 40.
Yeah, 40's nothing.
Wow.
You usually get like 200 this fucking aids when you get task.
Oh, I love getting 200 because I just put up a cannon.
Yeah, but how much money do you make off Caliphite?
You don't make any money. You just
Then why am I
task.
doing this, dude? This is not quite fun.
XP.
It's like Dagonauts, you know, just quick
Nice.
XP.
That was a sick ass burp, dude.
Dagonoth, you get the ring.
What ring?
Don't you get rings from the Dagonoth? Or am I thinking of something else? You get the
The
rings.
fuck are you talking
You say
about?
the
the
vaginas?
fucking, like,
the
warrior
shamans.
ring?
The shamans.
What's a vagina?
Warrior rings? No, wait. Are you talking about fucking? You're talking about something completely
Yeah,
different.
no,
I
he's
think
talking about the
that's-
shaman's.
No,
Yeah,
the warrior
Dagonoth
ring and every.
shaman.
No. They're from Dagonoth Kings. All right.
Dagonoth.
Dagonoth
Wait,
Kings.
who's the shaman? Isn't that one of the rings?
That's with Dragon Warhammer.
Wait, no, like isn't
You know, see, Dagonoths, dude? Yeah, so yeah, you're fucking
Dagonoth Kings drops the thing you're talking about, the rings.
Stop saying re
shit.
so much.
Wait,
You're
but
overusing it.
wait, no, the shamans are by the Rex, aren't they? No,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
one
yeah,
of them
okay,
is
yeah,
named
sure.
Rex.
Yeah, no, okay, that's what I think about. No, fuck. Okay, yeah, I'm stupid.
Alright, I love you guys.
All right.
I love you too, man.
goodbye.
Thanks.
At work.
Hey. Who's this new
Is
guy?
there anyone around?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there's cameras all around it, and they can see within my vehicle. Like, I know where the blind spots are, but it's negative 32 degrees outside, and it's so fucking cold. in this truck.
Okay, it just sounds like you're a pussy then. Okay, never mind.
Bitch, you ever
Oh,
been in
wow.
negative 32 degree weather? I didn't think so.
Yo, I do the Wim Hof breathing method, motherfucker.
Does anyone else have to wear like bigger pant size, like bigger waist size, because their penis always fucking unbuttons that shit?
Like a
That's just me.
What? What do
Just
you
a
mean?
me thing.
I'm gonna,
Do you put your penis
I
in
was
your
gonna
fucking...
say, like, my penis just goes down to, like, the left or right leg. Or, like, I wear, like, a Super Saiyan tail. But then again,
Well,
I have a
mine's
custom made
pretty
dick
much
sock.
just a couple inches in girth.
Yeah, mine's a 30-foot anaconda. And it don't want none unless you got buns, hun. First
I
of
was
all...
gonna say, like,
anaconda don't.
mine ain't too
My
far off.
anaconda don't. My anaconda don't
Why are we
want
doing
none of
Anaconda
yeah.
now?
Buns, hun. Doot, 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 doot. Nicki Minaj is a fucking lyrical wordsmith genius.
I mean, you
Have
think
you
God
seen
is a
that video
woman?
with
I don't
Nicki
think
Minaj
that
playing
was pretty
No
good.
MGK.
Yo,
so
Rico,
dude.
you're drunk. Stop making this into something
Hey, yo,
bigger.
Alki,
homie.
Alki. Hey, yo, Alki, move devil inside.
No.
Yeah, move.
Hey, nobody
Devil.
moved.
Oh,
me, son.
shit,
What the
my-
fuck?
Hey, my nigga devil.
Yeah, you gotta be on
I
the
had to
list,
wait for
man.
space.
You gotta be on the list.
Oh yes.
What
There's
list?
a
No,
list.
on
Yeah,
the
it's like an
list.
exclusive
Devil.
club.
Fuck the fuck up.
Fuck you, devil.
When and where?
Like Davos, like from Game of Thrones? Or
Oh
Devil?
wait,
What?
wasn't that Game
Sorry?
of Thrones, dude? I played the what the fuck, the Telltale game of Game of Thrones, and that's all I know about it.
You never watched Game of Thrones?
No.
Watch
Get the
watch
fuck
the
out.
how should
Get the
Let-
fuck out of here. Go watch Game of Thrones right now, I swear to God.
I can't get into it. It's so fucking
What do
retarded.
you mean? Yo, the first
It-
episode is whack, dude.
The
The first episode is crazy.
Episode.
Yeah, the first episode's fucking
I've seen-
crazy. It only gets crazier from the. It's like wet. It's fucking amazing. I don't know how you can't like it.
I
What do you like?
To...
I only like spaceships. Is that you?
I only like
No, I haven't actually yet seen any spaceships. Dude. I hate Star Wars. Well, I don't hate Star Wars. I hate what they
Oh
did
my
with
God.
Star Wars.
If you said you hate Star Wars, I would have been like, get the fuck out of here. Someone
I
ban this
hate
guy.
what they're
hate Star
fucking
Wars.
Disney-
But
I
I mean, you
what they're
can't.
doing with Star Wars.
How can you hate Star Wars and
Fucking-
Game
what
of
was
Thrones?
Star Wars is garbage.
Do you hate Game of Thrones too, Alki, or what?
No, I don't.
Han-
No, let me revise that. Original trilogy, great, amazing,
Yeah.
awesome stuff.
Yeah.
New
The rest of
shit's
it's
gay.
crap.
Yes.
Hey,
I'll commit to
Alki,
this.
Agreed.
I have a
Agreed.
question for you.
What's your question?
Is there any guys in here named Casey?
No.
What an
No,
unfortunate
no,
name.
no. Why?
Well, someone that's no longer in the server was saying, hey, I need you to find info on this guy and see if he's in the server, and I asked why. They wouldn't tell me.
Probably because he wants to suck his dick.
Yeah. Are they paying you
Alki.
money for this? Because you could probably be
No.
like, yo, send me $10 on PayPal and I'll figure it out. Be like a private investigator.
Uh,
You gotta monetize, girl.
Yeah,
Get your
I've
hustle
never
on.
heard of a person called Casey now.
Get your hustle on.
Rico,
Sorry, my time is
you
valuable.
need to hold your breath for a few seconds, guys.
Yeah. What's who's the person?
Hmm?
Who's the person?
Rico,
Who's the
you
person
already
who
said
what?
you found it shady. Stop, you're drunk, you're repeating yourself. Just tell her you're sorry and that you want to be chill. Damn.
Wait, what's going on?
Fucking Rico's drunk and typing to Wilma.
Nigga, chill. I'm chilling, alright? I still got
What the
some drink
fuck?
left.
What time is it where you live, Rico? What the fuck?
Nigga, it's 2:36 in the morning. but
Oh,
I
he's
just
on the
got-
West Coast. West Side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all some bitches, bro. Fuck y'all. Y'all fake as hell.
I'm sorry. What happened?
Yeah,
I
you guys
was,
ain't even
not
from the
paying
West Coast,
attention.
motherfuckers. Shit.
Yeah, but I am from the West.
I
Who said
mean, I'm
East?
Yeah,
from the
bet.
I'm
Midwest.
not even from America.
Who's
I
East
mean,
wow.
could
Coast?
be.
Smelly
No
people,
one?
that's
What the
who.
fuck?
I was gonna
Smelly
say
East
I'm from
Coasters.
the Midwest.
If you're from the East Coast, we're gonna ostracize you.
I mean, you
Man,
could.
kill yourself. You won't touch me.
I will use my foreskin to protect myself.
Oh my god.
Please.
That's
Hey,
fucked. I've been
hey,
stretching it for
Spanish.
years.
You won't touch me.
It's like a net now. I will capture a wife one day.
Yo, I wonder if as I get older, my foreskin will come back.
Oh my god.
It's like a starfish when you cut your penis off, it grows back.
Oh my god, that just
Imagine.
you saying
Just
that.
imagine
Ugh.
we have two black men over here.
Just
right
you
now.
saying that made my dick hurt. Like cutting your dick off.
What?
The guy was like,
So
if
what's
you
the name?
cut it off, it
Guys,
grows
Jack?
back. Like, ugh,
Oh shit! I actually need to get up and go have a shower.
ugh. Yeah, seriously, that made me
Let
feel
let
dirty.
slit your cock.
That made
What
me feel
if like
dirty.
what if the
Excuse
only way
me?
to get a bit? What if the
I
only
want
way?
to slit your fucking cock and suck it.
Oh,
Oh my
Say that
god!
one more time.
I will.
supposed to slurp your cock and slob on the balls.
Split.
I said slit.
Ugh.
Which
She wants
style?
Yeah,
to-
no. That's a no from me, dog. I'm out.
Slit your cock open.
So
Oh,
you're saying down the middle or like cut
See,
it
that's
in
a,
half?
oh my god, I can't do it. That's so gross. Oh my god. I need to go take a shower. That's fucking dirty. What if we get they're gonna move? Like, if I look away for long enough. I don't think it's moving. I wonder if I can unmute myself now. Are we done? Are you guys
You
done?
feel me? So like you
Are we
don't
done?
you don't
I mean,
you don't
like-
actually you don't actually want to hurt a female. You just want a female that can actually.
Oh
take
no, I'm
it.
into that BDSM shit.
Ah, nah, man. See, I don't want to hurt a female. I want her to enjoy it.
Nah, I want to beat the bitch.
What if she
And
wants to
never know
be
her-
hurt, though? What if she
Then,
enjoys
then
it?
that's
part of it.
different because
Hello.
like
Okay.
you're doing what a female wants. You feel me? So
I want her to
mean-
be unable to walk.
So you're just like a
for the next-
cuck?
I mean, I'm just trying to fucking get my property and teach it its place.
Oh my god, you can't say that, dude. No. Oh my god. Fuck me. What am I doing here? I can't be in this. No respect. No respect for human decency in that fucking chat. That's gotta be. That's gotta be put to rest right now. That's too much. The light. I've seen the light. Staring directly into the sun. With glasses on. Magnifying glasses.
What's funny? I probably have the same amount.
Wonder how much meth I have now. Alright, it's a lot of meth. Oh, what's that? Oh yeah, that's a place I can surely find people.
I'm hippopotamus.
I can't even sneak up
Leave
on
me
you. I
alone.
don't have a.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, what do you mean? Explain.
Why are you running?
Why are you running?
Why are you running?
Nobody look at my face!
Get out in the swamp.
It's my swamp.
Oh my god!
Where's
He's attacking this trike. He's attacking this trike.
Can we do Shrek RP?
What's
up, Mick?
He's gonna
what's
kill
going
this
on?
trike. He's gonna kill this trike. This.
What the fuck did you say?
Can we do Shrek
Ah,
RP
there's
in the
Bucky.
swamp?
Dude, look at this trike. He's getting 3 stomps, and he's just getting.
Yeah, he wants to die.
Oh my! Oh, he's
It's
finally
my
dead.
swamp.
What
Donkey.
are you doing in my swamp?
Donkey!
Where's the lamb
What are you
salt that
doing
you-
in my swamp, donkey?
I'm carnivore
these-
now.
Dude,
I'm
there's
carnivore.
Wait, are you dead?
What? There's a
It's
carnivore
so
now?
bad. My Shrek accent needs
There's
work.
always
Oh
been
my
a
god, it's
carnivore.
so laggy. What the hell?
Last time I checked, Asuko was a carnivore.
Oh my god.
Have you guys ever been to my Vario?
Oh man, I can't kill anything now.
I see you. Oh, my leg is healed. Yay.
I'm the one in front.
You're in France?
Wait, did you just attack that one?
No.
That wasn't.
It too called. Calm down.
You don't
Yeah,
attack
calm
me or else I'll
down,
attack
bro.
you.
You guys are a
prank,
little
bro.
too excited right
You
now.
attack me, I'll attack
no.
you, slut.
Calm your bull.
They calling me? I'm not a dinosaur. I'm not angry.
Hmm?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
What's up? I'm doing just fine, thank you. How's everyone doing? What are you guys again? You guys are...
Pecky.
That sounds... Isn't that a racial slur?
No.
I mean, it's not
No.
in the context of this.
We are dinosaurs, not racist.
Yeah, true. True. You eat racist people. Have they added tribal people yet?
No. I don't know if they're still working on them because I haven't heard any updates for a long.
Yeah, it's been a while, eh?
Mm.
Are you still in the developmental branch?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That's where Insomnia's servers are based.
Yeah. But like they had didn't they have like before I remember the switch. They went from like the stable branch to developmental. I guess they just never went back.
As far as I know, they've always been on dev branch, but I could be wrong.
How long have you been playing on the server? Like a few weeks?
Only 91%. Watch out, Freya.
I skittered, don't worry. I heard the noise and I ran.
The fucking Diablo went to the river.
What was that? The equivalent of like you come here often, or? Because like I've played on the server since like September, I think. But like I haven't played that game in a long time. But...
They just updated the packies, so.
Oh, okay.
So it's it's relatively powerful. It hurts a lot.
Packies
So
are the
it's not a
dinosaurs
weak-
with like the hard skulls that smash shit, right? With their heads.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like from Jurassic Park 2.
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck is this Dibble doing?
Thanks. Oh my god, Shrek. Someone's name is Shrek on my stream. That's fucking hilarious. Let's fucking do a Shrek RP in the swamp. You guys are down.
Donkey! Get out my swamp!
Donkey! Dominic the donkey. Jingity ching. Ee-aw, ee-aw. The Italian Christmas
let's go.
donkey.
I have no idea what the Suko and these devils are doing. I'm doing a shit. What is that? This is a big
It's
old
a
thing.
trike.
A
It's a
strike. Yeah.
Do you guys just like break legs?
Yeah, we have a 20% bone break on charge.
Oh my god.
It's only 20%, but
Is your
in
charge
couple-
cancerous? Like, do you like go super fast when you charge?
Charge. We don't go super fast, but it's we have really high stamina, and As a full adult, you do 150 damage with your attack, and then it doubles when you charge with a 20% bone break.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh snap.
Yeah. Packies are kind of serious, but they're like little glass cannons. Because any apex predator can come up and like one or two shots you, and you're
Oh
dead.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, that game's ruthless, man. It's fucking ruthless. People are savages. We need to form like a league of dinosaurs. I don't know. It seems to me that like most of that game is like packs of dinosaurs, or you're playing as a predator, like a carnivore, and you're just eating other carnivores, like because you can never take down a herd, which is like pretty realistic, but at the same time, I don't know, it like just makes it so hard to play carnivore, which I guess is a good thing in a sense.
If skilled in taking down groups of people.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. Oh,
This seems like a lot of like luck to get to be an apex, right?
A lot of hiding and a lot of getting on when people aren't really
Yeah,
active.
it's an investment. It's like 8 hours, and then
But I mean, once you're an apex, you should theoretically have the skill to take down just about everything and anything.
yeah, I've had some bad experiences with that. Although honestly, like really cool though as well. I like got Apex T-Rex. I was in a fucking bush with a sub. We were like paired up, and this like all I see is the face like crouch down of a giant T-Rex just like appear through the bushes in front of me. And I'm like, oh fuck. They stand up and I stand up. They're charging me. We just had like a T-Rex fight. It was actually really cool, but I died there like shortly thereafter. So
yeah, they buffed the T-Rex's bite force now. Did you know that?
no. Can the T-Rex? Okay, can you like swing your tail yet as a carnivore? Because like I found ass riding was kind of cancerous. Like if you had some animal just chasing you.
No
from
idea.
I mean, you can kind of counter it if you like stop and then bite, and as they're like chasing you, they'll probably not realize it and then just run into your bite. But it can be hit or miss if they're actually really paying attention. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
Do you turning how it used to be and is on a fish?
I'm sort of cutting out. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Is that
You used to be
Australian?
able to hold.
Australian
no, it used
internet?
to be able. No. Yeah. Luna, she looks pretty close now.
So you're saying you used to hold what?
Alt, and then, W or D, and it gives you an on-point turn. But it's
Oh, yeah, 'cause
disabled
you
on the
can-
server.
Oh. Huh. Yeah, I guess for like realism sake. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I feel like they could. I don't know. I was gonna say make some sort of like trampling system where like if you're running at the feet of a big dinosaur you can get trampled, but that might screw over a lot of herds.
Those can do trample damage.
Which dinosaur?
Hypo? Like Hypo Rex, Spino, and Giga, they do trample damage.
Oh.
Luna! No. He's so cute. Sounds like a little goat. It's adorable.
Where'd the goat go?
Nice.
Classic. What a good movie though, Jurassic Park. Holy shit.
What is that?
I think they're messing with each other. Because they both know they can't kill each other with the body there. So as long as there's a body, we're safe. It's like all the fucking herbivores on this mountain are being all
criticizing the
riled
United
up.
States for engaging in economic
No
warfare
reason.
against Venezuela. He's attributing this as the real reason behind the humanitarian crisis in the country. Now, over the years, Venezuelans have dealt with hyperinflation along with food and medicine shortages. His complaint comes as new reports are published that now the Bank of England is
Right, let's get you some
pressure
food.
from the United States is now withholding over $1 billion of gold from Nicolas Maduro.
What we're seeing here, and it reminds me a lot of the run-up to the 2003 invasion of Iraq, we're seeing here a coordinated effort to denounce, demonize Maduro, and to invoke human rights to say we need regime change because of the Venezuelan people.
And that's really the trick, is to activate your body's defenses against aging. I mean, the old theories about aging, you got to throw them out. Most people at parties will tell you, oh, antioxidants,
Keep coming, Lou.
free radicals, DNA damage, or mutations. That is all, for the most part, incorrect.
That antioxidants cause DNA damage?
No, that's true.
That it repairs DNA damage.
Well, antioxidants have been a rather big failure in the aging field.
But resveratrol is an antioxidant, correct?
It's a mild antioxidant, but it doesn't work by being an antioxidant.
Oh, what does it work? What is the pathway?
It steps on the accelerator pedal of these sirtuin enzymes.
Oh, okay.
And so it's directly
Where's the
controlling
cute?
The body's
I'm
defenses
confused.
against aging.
So as we discussed it, or as people discussed it as an
I'll go-
antioxidant, it was just a
And then
mild
run to me.
form of antioxidant, but it did so much more.
Right. And we know this because if you create a yeast cell or a worm or a mouse and then you knock out the gene for the sirtuin, now the resveratrol doesn't help the animal anymore.
That's interesting because when people talk about wine, that's the one thing they say, the resveratrol is an antioxidant. It's really good for you.
Yeah, this is one of those urban myths that never goes away and still fuels a billion-dollar industry. But what we're finding is that the molecules in plants, like resveratrol, first of all, that we think they're produced by plants
Bush
because
at the
the plants are
very back
benefiting
here.
from the stress. We call it hormesis. A little bit of stress is good for you. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, kind of thing. And hormesis was discovered
Mighty majestic
about
noodle.
60, 70 years ago when people were spraying herbicides on plants, and a little bit of herbicide actually made them stronger. And we think that these molecules in plants are similar. They make the plant
Picture it didn't happen.
stronger during times of stress. So if you stress a grape that's for wine
No,
making,
it's they're referring
you'll
to
get
the
grape
pew because it's a
wine,
long
but
neck.
you also get a
or
lot of
sauropod.
resveratrol. And so when we
It's
ingest that
majestic mighty
resveratrol
noodle.
from the plants, we get the same health benefits.
Because more often than
plants
not,
are
Pew's
activating those
fucking
sirtuin
one-shot
pathways,
things.
and we have the
Yeah.
sirtuins, and they activate us as well.
Stomp them to death.
Interesting.
All right.
Interesting. So low carb, low sugar. Any specific type of protein? Do you limit your amount of protein?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy eating mammals just as much as anybody, but I try to avoid them for two main reasons. One is that there's this TMAO molecule that seems to cause heart disease.
TMAO.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how is it linked to heart disease?
Find a tree to log out in.
Is these
But it's
epidemiology
my big
studies?
time.
I forget,
But
but
you've
I
got
do
Luna
recall
up
that the
here now,
study
which is the
was
main
able
thing.
to
Yeah.
give the TMAO to animals, and they developed heart disease. So it's somehow causing it. I forget
Don't
exactly
go
how.
wandering too
It
far.
might be damaging the genome.
From the
That's my
Syria again.
recollection.
With omnivores or
If not, I have another one that's kind of logged
I
out in the
think
same
this
area as
red
you
meat
are
is
right
the
now.
culprit.
So
Right. So are they giving
that was
this
not a
to
full
rats, or
adult
are they
yet,
giving
but
this
he will
to-
be.
It was a mouse study again.
Mm.
So I mean,
Will be
mice might be
soon.
different from humans,
I'm
of course.
close to being a full adult.
But the other
I am
problem
a full adult.
meat
Cool.
in general from
Yeah, you
animals
have
is that there's a lot of amino acids in there, and
fucking
it's easy to
head button
eat a lot of meat.
force.
And so if you have high
Pure
levels of
headbutt.
amino acids, it will activate this mTOR pathway, one of those three longevity pathways.
Okay.
You
Well,
don't
as always,
want
it's
that.
been a pleasure, and I shall
You don't want
catch
that
up with
because
you.
mTOR has evolved to
Yeah.
sense
Make
times
some
of
babies.
adversity and stress.
I'll see you
and hunger.
tomorrow.
So why do people see
Taylor-
performance
Taylor-
benefit
excuse
when
me,
they
Taylor should be
consume
on
branched
too.
chain amino acids?
He could be our baby then.
Yeah, right.
Really good question. So in the short run,
Well, you guys are moving a little fast. You may want to slow
testosterone,
down and like.
It will give you
make sure you're not getting
performance benefits.
fiscally
But we
irresponsible
think in
here.
the long run, it'll actually come back to
Well,
bite
you
you.
know,
We're
So how
far
do
from
branched chain
irresponsible
amino acids come
adults.
back to
You
bite
gotta check your budget,
branched
see
chain
if you
amino
can even
acids will
afford a
activate
baby.
this
First
mTOR
of all,
pathway.
Mhm.
Excuse me, it's bushes,
and
not
to
budget.
This mountain
When we
is
do
rich
that in
in
animals,
resources
we reduce their lifespan. So it's the opposite.
and
You wanna
security.
Keep those
but do you have
levels low.
do you have the security though? What if an
interesting.
apex
That
comes?
seems
You know?
And,
for a
Well,
dummy like
do you have
me,
any-
the
it seems
best thing about it
counterintuitive,
is
'cause it
it's
would make you
insane.
perform
Oh.
better currently. You would think
Not until the
especially
Americans
something
come and
like
steal
amino
your
acids,
land.
a natural part of the human body.
Through
You would
treaties
think
that they
that would be
break.
beneficial. You're adding to your body
Yeah.
something that it needs.
Dear
Yeah, you
God.
would, but
All right,
what you
I
should
shall see you
consider
guys
is
tomorrow.
that it's a
Good night.
trade-off. There's
Alright.
a theory that's
Good night.
probably correct.
Hey, it's morning.
It's the
fucking 6 in the
Tom
morning.
Kirkwood's theory called the disposable soma. And our bodies want to do one of two
Is
things.
it?
We either want to grow really fast,
Not if you're
reproduce
Australian.
fast, build up a lot of
Oh.
muscle, cells
Are
divide.
you central?
That's great in the short run.
Yeah.
You know, you'll be fertile, you can run,
Gross.
but actually that's at the expense of
Chicago?
hunkering down and building a
You're
long-lasting body.
Australian?
And it's a trade-off over time. And so animals that grow
No,
fast
okay,
and
that's
reproduce
what I
fast,
thought.
like
I was
the
like,
other
no, you
Australian.
sound like an
will
East
only have a
Coast.
short lifespan.
Yeah.
Whereas a whale that grows slowly and reproduces slowly will live a long time.
Interesting.
She
So
is New Zealand.
The idea is
Oh.
you're
Yeah.
limiting your calories.
Signed
Said
up
something
for
about
that.
Australians before she
limiting
didn't
your
mention
protein,
anything
you're
bad.
limiting your amino
I was like,
acids,
Yeah.
but
what?
you're
I said
ramping
something.
up
I was like,
on all these
something about
beneficial
Australia, and she was like,
molecules.
nah.
Right, these pathways that have
Like, oh,
evolved
right.
since the beginning of
Makes
life
sense now.
to make us live
Yeah.
longer during adversity so we can thrive when times come
Well,
back.
Luna,
That's
Do you,
good.
do you take into
I'm
consideration
going to rear you until
quality of
you're
life
independent.
versus length of life? Like, is there a sweet spot?
Yeah, well,
Fucking
it's hard to ask the
Sarah
mice how
Palin.
they feel, but we do test them and we do frailty studies, and we can see that they've got better memory and they can run further on a treadmill. They're stronger.
I'll try to
those
protect
kind of
you
things
from the
they
best
see
of my
better.
abilities.
And we think that
I have yet to
probably
try
means
and
they're
hit
happier
things
as
with this
well.
dome.
And when you're taking in protein, so if you're not eating mammals, are you eating a lot of fish?
Yeah, fish is fine. White meat I indulge. I
Like chicken, that kind of stuff?
Chicken's fine. Not too much of it, but I'm trying to eat as many vegetables, especially the coloured ones, for the reason that I said, which is, well, a few reasons. One is that you don't ingest as much protein as you otherwise would. You get all the vitamins, but you also get those molecules from the plants that we think make you healthy. So resveratrol is just one of a bunch of polyphenols that plants make when they're stressed. And when plants are stressed, they go coloured. So the purples and the reds and the
Beets.
blues. Yeah, those are molecules that are generally healthy. And I think, I'm one of the few scientists who thinks this, but I think that we've evolved as animals to sense the plant world. And when our food supply is stressed out, then our bodies sense that by when we ingest them, we get these molecules like resveratrol. And we've evolved to sense that, and we get the benefits of longevity as a side effect.
So, this is really fascinating to me because the idea that you're trying to balance out the concept of a mouse growing very quickly but dying quickly as well. This is something that can extend and live longer and be more vital or have more vitality for a longer
I
period
would
of
have
time.
gone that close to the Suko.
Well, so
even though he
here's the
can't
great thing
tell
is
us
that now that
body
we
there, but
believe
still,
we've figured out why,
or not.
not just why, but how this all works. What are the
And
What's on
genes
the other
and
side?
pathways in the
That
body
doesn't
that
look
control
good.
this? We can have our cake and eat it too.
All right, guys. Good luck.
We
Don't
can-
die. I love
At
you.
least in a mouse and probably in a
Alright.
human in a few years'
Later,
time.
man.
And maybe even with these supplements, we'll see. We can trick the body into being hungry and being in adversity, even if you're eating a lot or you're not exercising. And so we're slowly, but eventually turning a mouse into more like a human, so that even though you can grow and reproduce quickly, you still turn on these protective pathways and live a long time. The best example is the nematode worm, C. elegans. It's been studied a lot for longevity. And the mutations that make those worms live sometimes 2 and up to 10 times longer are activating genes that are normally only turned on when they hunker down and turn into a little dour stage, which means that they're not really reproducing, they're just hibernating. So you can have the hibernation of benefits, but still live a normal, healthy life.
And this is from manipulating genes?
Right. So this all comes from genetics. So I'm a geneticist at Harvard, and the way the breakthrough came, so going back in the 1980s, it was antioxidants, mutations, because people really didn't have a handle on what was going on. And the idea that you could slow down aging with one gene or one drug was ludicrous because it's so complicated. But now we know from genetic studies is that you can find mutations, hundreds of them actually, in organisms that lengthen lifespan. So it's not as complicated as we thought.
What about myostatin inhibitors and the studies that they've done with mice? They turn them on and off, and they've grown those super mice,
Yeah.
Hulk mice.
Well, being a Hulk doesn't mean you'll live longer.
Right,
You
but
might
didn't
just-
they live longer, though?
I don't know, did they?
I believe they did. I think that was one of the weird side effects.
Well, if you allow me to speculate as
Yeah.
to why that might have happened, being bulky is good.
Let's
That's
find out
why-
if I'm correct first.
Yeah, do you want
See
to
if
check it
Jamie,
out?
Jamie will pull that up.
Well, one
Being
of the
bulky.
things is bulky is good. Bulky will increase your metabolism. It'll get rid of the fat, and the fat is a real problem because fat will make you inflamed. Being fat is one of the worst things you can do.
You
to
just
your
fat
body.
shamed,
I
and
did.
people are very, very upset at you right now.
Well, build up muscle as well. Some people are overweight and have a lot of muscle, and they're a lot better off.
When you teach classes, I assume,
I teach at Harvard, yeah.
and when you say that fat is bad, do you get a new reaction over the last couple of years? Or do you find a way around saying it like that?
I generally get okay comments on my lectures, but I wasn't saying fat people are bad. I was saying
having fat in your body is
fat
bad.
cells are bad.
Right. Okay. I like what you're saying. So you're breaking it down to cells. You're not picking on anybody.
Yeah.
Here, myostatin insufficiency produces 15% life extension in mice. So yeah, so those myostatin inhibitors make the mice grow longer. So you think that might have had an effect by virtue of the fact that they're more bulky and they have more muscle tissue and they burn off more fat?
That's one theory. The other thing would be that some muscles are secreting molecules called myokines into the bloodstream.
Mm.
And we don't know what they all are, but when you exercise, you do release some of these, and they may also be contributing. Because muscles are signaling to the whole body. When you go for a run, it's not that your muscles get an exercise. Everything in your body gets an exercise by these communication molecules.
Mm.
And that's why if you fuse an old mouse to a young mouse, you can have these benefits that the young mouse imparts on the old, and actually negatively vice versa.
And when you say by fuse, you mean by taking the blood of the old mouse and putting it into the young mouse?
Right, but what we actually do, because that's too hard, you can do it in humans, but in mice what you do is you sew the skin together so that the blood flows between them. Yeah, it's not so pleasant, but they don't seem to be too badly affected once they learn how to walk in sync.
Jesus. Now,
by the way, to all your listeners, we don't do those experiments in my lab, but when I say we, I mean
yes, scientists, the scientific community as a whole. What are your thoughts on, if you have any, about these startups that are actually taking the blood of young people and injecting it into the bodies of older folks?
Like Buddhists or something?
So I don't think there's a scientific reason to say it won't work. And the scientists who are involved are some of my great colleagues, very smart people.
Have you ever done it?
No. It's a bit extreme for me, but I think it could work.
Right.
It's just a little bit out there for me. But
little.
what they're going to do, what they're doing actually is treating people with neurological disorders. A lot of these startups, I'm involved in probably 15 startups right now. What we're trying to do is to treat diseases of aging and even rare childhood diseases because you can't treat it aging as a business model. There is no disease called aging yet.
Right.
But anyway, getting back to the science, I think that it's based on solid science. But the future is I think, a better way to go about this is to find what the actual molecules are in the blood and just make those. Don't give the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah, when you've said this twice, you think aging is a disease, or maybe perhaps should be treated as a disease or classified?
Oh, I absolutely think aging should be classified as a disease. We should think of it as a disease. I mean, why shouldn't we? Everything else that goes on in the body over time that's bad for us is considered a disease. Do you know why aging isn't considered a disease?
Because it happens to everybody?
Exactly.
Mm.
That's the only reason. Well, it happens to most people, 90% of people in the developed world. But why is that a reason to say, oh, it's natural, we should just deal with it? We used to say that about cancer, and we used to say that about dying from an infection.
When you say it happens to 90% of the people in the developed world, what happens to the other 10? They die?
Hit by a bus, I guess.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So they die young.
Yeah.
Okay. Just clarifying. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's dis-ease. It's a problem, right? Aging's a problem. I saw an old gentleman yesterday, and it was painful just to watch this poor guy walk, hunched over and just struggling to move at an incredibly slow pace. That seems like a person with a disease.
Well, it is. And imagine if we were on a planet now, or an island where everybody lives 300 years, and we'd show up, and you and I, in our midlife, we're starting to look old already. They're going to look at us and say, "What is wrong with you guys? We need to treat you urgently. We need to call this a new type of syndrome."
Right.
And it's only because we all tend to go through this that we think it's acceptable. But I would argue it's the biggest threat to the healthcare system. It's the biggest threat to the world's economy, actually, is the inability of us to treat people in their old age and keep them healthy.
Mm. Now, some people look at it a different way, and their consideration is that there's an overpopulation problem as it is. If folks like you want to walk around living to be 300 years old, have a gang of kids, you could create a mess.
Right. Well, I have 3 kids, but that's enough. That's more than I was going to have. But yeah, you have to do the math though. How much would the population grow? And I'm actually working with a number of people to try and calculate this. A couple of economists in London that we're working on. So this is really a problem. I agree with you that if this comes, and I would actually say when this comes.
When this comes.
It's coming. There's dozens of companies working on drugs. The science is here. So let's say it's coming anyway. So we have to deal with this. How are we going to deal with it? Well, let's first of all understand what the future looks like. We can't look backwards, all right, because no one's ever invented this stuff before. So we have to look forwards. What's the world look like? In terms of population, it's not as bad as you might think. If you stopped aging today and everybody just went on forever, the population growth rate would be less than the rate of immigration. Now, that can't go on forever, of course. But what we find is as people are healthier, especially in developing nations, they have fewer kids. So the calculation shows that it would eventually taper off. So the human population will taper off about 9 to 10 billion people and then stay there. And that population will be the happiest, healthiest people in the world.
Now, how do they predict that? Because I was having this conversation with someone the other day that as people become more affluent and society becomes more urban, people will have less and less children and the population will stabilize. Is that the theory behind this?
Right. Well, actually, education is a major part of that as well. Yeah, women's education is the main thing. But also just being healthier lifts the wealth of a nation.
And by women's education, do you mean extended education so that they pursue careers? Is that the idea? Or is it, I mean, obviously, most people understand how babies are made. Like, where's the education contributing to a lower population?
Well, so my understanding is that the first thing you do if you educate young women is that they can make choices for themselves and they're not just subjugated. Most men would like to have more children.
So you're thinking of like third world and...
Right, the real developing world. But that's where the population is a real problem. In Europe, they actually are struggling to keep up with their population. They've got an aging tsunami, so to speak. Same with Japan. The average farmer in Japan is 65 years old. They've got a real problem. China's about to head that way too. And that's going to drag the economy of the planet down. And it's going to be a real problem. We're going to waste so much money on keeping older people alive for the last 10, 20 years of their life with dementia, frailty. Trillions of dollars. Just $50 trillion just in this country alone that could be spent on figuring out how to solve global warming, better education, the environment, saving the 1/3 of species that are becoming threatened. that's why I think tackling aging isn't a selfish act. It's probably the most generous act that I could give the planet.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. What populations as a whole, when you look at the world, where are the people living the longest and why?
Well, it's debatable. There are these blue zones. I think many of your listeners will have heard about those. But there are pockets that have great genes, but they also have great diets and lifestyles. And so the best one that I'm familiar with is the island of Okinawa in Japan. And by the way, I used to follow the Okinawa diet. A couple of my good friends wrote a book about it. So I was on tofu and some fish. Felt really great. Couldn't keep it up. But those...
Why couldn't you keep it up?
I had kids and our meals turned into pizzas and pasta. And, yeah, unfortunately. But I'm getting back there now that my kids are teenagers. But the Okinawans, they live into their hundreds fairly frequently. It's not 1 in a million. It's more like 1 in, I think, 100,000 or something. So it's 10 times higher. They work most of their lives. They're physically active. They fast a lot, and they have a lot of green leafy vegetables. And that seems to be the secret.
And they were selling something. There was something about their mineral-rich diet. Remember they were selling. It was like a big thing for a while. Coral calcium, and they were using that as an example of why the Okinawans were living so long. Do you remember that kind of
I do remember
fad?
it. Yeah, but in scientific circles, we weren't really bothered with it.
Yeah, like there's calcium is calcium, right?
Yeah, I don't know much about it.
Better calcium from coral or something. I mean, I might even be wrong about that. Yeah. But I just remember reading about the Okinawans and the speculation. They eat seaweed as well, right? Which is very healthy.
Probably the best thing that they do is they don't overeat.
Mm.
Stop at 70%.
Yeah, I'm a glutton. That's my number one problem. I just love to eat.
Yeah, me too.
And I keep going. Once I'm in it, I just want to just keep shoving it in my face. But I've done a good job over the last few years of tapering that off. And the intermittent fasting, I think, is probably one of the best things I've ever done in terms of, just maintaining energy levels, maintaining body weight, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, you look good. So I think that's one of the best things that people can do. What we've known for 70 or more years, actually, is if you calorie restrict animals, actually even yeast cells and worms, they live longer. And this is the most robust way to prevent cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's in a mouse. And so the intermittent fasting is just a way of mimicking this calorie restricted diet. So what is calorie restriction? It's reducing what your doctor would recommend for your body, but reducing it back to about 20 to 30%. So it's quite extreme. That's not pleasant. I tried that for a week, gave up, too hard. But intermittent fasting, like yourself, it's doable. It's not always pleasant, but I think that's the best way to do it. And with the mice, it works just as well as calorie restriction, which is pretty much always being a bit hungry.
Now, what other things are you looking at in terms of mitigating stress, or like what other factors are there that you have to keep an eye on?
Yeah, stress is a bad one. I try to take life in my stride, not get too worried about it, remember what's important. So my heart rate rarely goes up, even under really extreme circumstances. And that's about it. I try to balance my life as best I can. I don't go through airport scanners as much as I can and have x-rays, these little things.
Do you think those are bad for you? The new ones, aren't they like a radio wave?
Yeah, they're millimeter radio waves. I don't want to take any chances, and also don't want to freak people out. But the old style ones that were banned in Europe first, they were potentially damaging. X-rays definitely. Try not to have as many as you can.
But flying is just as bad as an X-ray, isn't it?
Well, that's the problem. I was going through a scanner, and I said I don't want to go through the scanner, and they got quite upset because it's a bother. But they said, it's just as much damage to your body as the flight. And so I said, why do I want to double it? Anyway, so I go through scanners, but I try not to. But let me tell you why I think it's so bad. Because scanners are going to change what we call the epigenome. Now, a lot of people haven't heard of the epigenome. The genome, everybody knows, it's your DNA, the code of life. The epigenome is what regulates and reads those genes at the right time. Okay, and so we knew about DNA. We know how to read the genome pretty easily. We can do that now on a Mars bar-sized device in a day. The epigenome is quite different. The epigenome is the structure of how the DNA is looped around. If you look at the chromosome, you're not seeing the genome, you're really basically seeing the epigenome. And what I think is causing aging is not that you're losing the DNA structure, you're not having mutations, you're actually changing the epigenome, which is the reader of the genes. So put it another way, compact disc, okay? For the young audience, compact discs are little things we used to put music on. But anyway, these are digital information, of course. And the reason we switch to digital in the first place is that it's very copyable and it doesn't wear out. Whereas a cassette tape, people our age know that if you try to copy that 1,000 times, there's not much left at the end. So the compact disc information is the genome. The epigenome is the reader of the CD, that little laser that goes around. And what I think is causing aging is not the loss of the digital information, but it's the reader, the analog part. And that's like a cassette tape that eventually runs out. So what's going on really is that your cells are losing the ability to read the right genes the way they did when you were 20. And that's basically noise, informational noise that gathers over time. And so what we end up with when we're 80 is a compact disc or a DVD that's scratched. So the reader cannot read the right genes at the right time. And the cells become dysfunctional. Now what we're working on is how do you polish that CD or that DVD to get that information back again. And if you could do that, I think that's really the best way to reset your age. And we haven't polished it yet, but we're working on ways to actually reset that genome and actually get back the information that we once had when we were 20.
So what is happening to the epigenome when you're going through those scanners?
Well, so what we found is the biggest disruptor of the epigenome is a broken chromosome, a DNA break. And I don't know about the scanners, that's just an abundance of caution, but an X-ray will damage your DNA, no question. Even going out in the sun will do a bit of that. And we think that the cell's reaction to that break, having to unwrap the DNA from its chromatin, we call it, and then rewrap it, is what eventually disrupts the ability to read the right gene at the right place. So DNA damage is essentially a little scratch on the DVD, and that accumulates over time.
So being out in the sun does that, but being out in the sun also is beneficial. Your body produces more vitamin D.
Yeah, well, so there's also a theory called antagonistic pleiotropy, which is what's good for you when you're young comes back to bite you when you're old. So you might look good and feel good and get vitamin D when you're young, but the accumulation of these scratches on the epigenome ends up, I'm formerly an Australian, originally an Australian, I'm now American and Australian. I grew up in the Australian sun, and I can tell you that, most Australians look older than they should.
No ozone.
No ozone and lack of sunscreen in the 1970s.
Why do you guys have a whole ozone over Australia? What's that all about? What'd you do?
No, it's what did the world do? Chlorofluorocarbons.
No, you guys did it.
Oh, sure. Well, hairspray.
Why does it accumulate over Australia? Is there a theory behind that?
It started in Antarctica, and so ozone will...
That'd have been convenient. Nobody's up there. Leave it up there.
Yeah, well,
maybe we need a big fan.
You need it.
Blow it that way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the ozone layer is fairly important if you don't want to get singed by UV light. Yeah.
Well, that's one of the first things I noticed when I went to Australia was there's all these sun cancer warnings, skin cancer warnings everywhere.
Well, a third of Australians get some form of skin cancer. So
that's crazy.
Yeah. But what's also going to happen is it'll disrupt your epigenome over time, and you'll look old. But if you have an X-ray, you're going to damage your organs. You're going to accelerate aging, I believe, in your body. And it happens. You can't avoid double-strand breaks, broken chromosomes. It happens all the time. There's trillions of cells in your body, and it's happening all the time. So living is a problem. Okay.
Flying
is even worse. But what we're working on is how do you get back that original information into the cell and make a cell not just believe that it's 20 again, but actually be 20.
So what do you do?
We reprogram them. There are a set of genes that we and others have found, 3 main ones, that when you put them into a cell or even into a mouse, they become younger again.
Whoa. How far do you think you are from implementing this on human beings?
Well, so theoretically...
are you doing it to yourself already?
You could do it to yourself.
Theoretically.
I wouldn't do that because I'm not crazy. We need to figure out the safety. I don't want to become a giant tumor.
Why don't we just use it on bad people?
Yeah, well, that...
Take people
no
on
comment.
death row and turn them into 18-year-olds and go, whoa.
Yeah, well, yeah, that would be for someone else.
Someone else?
Well, hopefully no one would ever do that.
Why not?
Well,
You're gonna kill them.
Here's what we're doing. I agree with you that we want to see what happens in
Yeah.
humans.
I mean, just give them like free pizza or something. They're on death row, right? If they're already murderers.
You want to be the first one?
To me,
Come to my
I'm on
lab?
death row. I don't want to go into death row. But I'm saying, if you're gonna kill somebody, like, wouldn't it be a good idea to like go, hey, we'll give you 4 hours of TV a day. So we want to shoot you up with some stuff that's gonna make you younger. If I was on death row, I'd go do it. See what's up. I don't watch TV.
What we do is, so we give it to old mice and we check what happens to their body.
So nursing home people, do it to them, right?
Well, tell you what, I wouldn't force anyone, but if somebody was blind or almost blind,
yeah,
and in our studies we're recovering eyesight.
Really?
Yeah.
What about to damaged eyes?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't want to freak out.
Because I know a guy who's got a significantly damaged eye from fighting.
Well, I can tell you what we've done, and this is work we're writing up for publication now. We've done a few things, 3 things to the mice. One is we've pinched their optic nerve and crushed it, which is a test for growing neurons in the eye. And we find that with our reprogramming, we can make the nerves be just like a newborn baby. They grow back. And then we also tested on glaucoma, pressure in the eye. We increase pressure in the mouse's eye and they lose largely their eyesight, and we can recover that. And then we also test old mice that don't see very well, and we also seem to improve their eyesight almost back to normal. So what I don't think we'll be going to nursing homes anytime soon, but what we are doing is running a clinical trial on this. And so we're looking to do that in early 2020.
And the clinical trial will be on people with glaucoma or various eye issues?
The plan is glaucoma first, but it could work for other damaged retinas as well. Even broken spinal cords we're thinking of trying.
Whoa. Wow.
And that's just one part of the body. Imagine what it could potentially do to the rest of us.
Do you feel incredibly fortunate to be living in this century?
I do every day, but I would love to live next century because it's going to be even cooler.
Yeah, but what's cool is you're kind of at the tip of the spear pushing this stuff right now. Like, you're going to be one of the guys that gets to see this stuff get implemented from your actual own research where it didn't exist before.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn cool. Better than, like, living 100 years from now where you just take it for granted like a trust fund kid. You know?
Yeah, but just imagine what you can do in 100 years. You can.
Right. Well, maybe you'll be here.
Where? Oh, on the Earth?
Yeah, you might be 150.
We'll see. I think there's a chance someone will be.
Well, it's a good chance you're going to be. I mean, you're the one who's going to know.
Well, so here's my philosophy. I'm not going to let anyone try technology until I've tried it first.
Really?
Yeah. So I was taking NMN.
Pregnant pause because you're currently doing something like that?
I'm not doing the reprogramming yet. That's a little dangerous. But the others I've always wanted to know first.
My eyesight is starting to go because I'm 51 now, and like when if I had to read this book, I got Nick Christakis' book. If I'm sitting here reading this book, if I don't have reading glasses on, I got to do this. It's a bit of a struggle. You gonna be able to fix that?
So potentially in the mice we can.
You can.
We don't give them books to read, but their eyesight improves. We can test that.
How do you do it?
There's a moving screen.
No, I don't mean how do you how do you know, how do you test, or not how do you test rather, how do you improve their eyesight?
We've put these reprogramming genes into a virus, which is already used to treat genetic diseases in the eye, and we inject it straight into the mouse's eyeball.
This sounds like the beginning of a horror movie.
Yeah, I think it's actually...
or an awesome movie.
It's the awesome part that I'm
so?
focused on. Well, if you're going blind,
right,
one injection from your doctor, and then you take an antibiotic to turn the genes on for as long as you need, and you get your eyesight back, that's not horrific at all.
That's pretty incredible. How far away do you think you are of doing that to humans?
Well, 2020 will be the first safety study, we hope.
Wow.
Yeah, but the crazy stuff, the future is, if this all goes well, you have an injection in your vein, let's say when you're 30, and then those viruses infect your body, and they sit there dormant until you need them. So when might you need them? You might have a car accident.
Sorry, Bunny.
You can turn them on with just an antibiotic in a drip or in a pill. or you start to lose your eyesight. Take an antibiotic.
So you put them in your body almost as an insurance policy, and then you have the option to turn them on in the future.
Exactly.
Wow.
That's what we do in the mice.
Now, with every action, we assume there's some negative consequence or potentially negative consequence, right?
We always assume that, but it's not always right.
Mm.
So with the molecules that we've been testing for years now, like NMN, we haven't seen any downside, just longer endurance and protection. So there isn't always a downside to these things. In fact, if you just think NMN is replacing a molecule that we lose over time as we get older, it's just becoming, it's a fairly natural process. No downside exercising and dieting either.
Right, of course. And you said you run once a week. Is that what you do?
Mm-hmm.
You do you lift weights as well?
Right.
And when you do it, do you try to not go too hard or burn yourself out too much? Like, do you have a sweet spot?
Yeah, I do. I try not to go too much. That's the trick with everything in life.
Mm.
It's this hormesis effect. Get your body damaged enough that it can repair itself but give you the benefits without like having a lot of x-rays or radiation,
Right.
overdoing it and scratching that CD.
Yeah, that's always my thought on people that do extreme endurance activities like ultra marathons and things along those lines. I marvel at their willpower and their ability to push themselves through that, and the physical condition they have to be in to perform such feats. But I always think, man, you're probably doing X times the amount of damage to your body that a normal person does at your age.
That sounds right. Calorie restriction works, but if you overdo it, you also
starve.
You die. So you got to find the right balance.
Right. Now, how do you know what the right balance is for you?
Good question. How does anybody? So we live in an age that is still fairly primitive. This is why I like the future. These days we go to the doctor, or most of us go to the doctor for annual physical, which is ludicrous. The idea that your doctor will take hopefully a blood test or prostate exam once a year, that's kind of crazy. What happens if you've got a tumor that developed the day you leave the doctor's office? So the future, and actually partially for those who are on the cutting edge, can be done right now. It's monitoring your body in various ways, genetically, epigenetically. We can measure those scratches right now. And also with blood tests, you can also have companies tell you if you're out of range, if you're not optimized, and how to get it back in order. So that's what I do.
So how often do you monitor your blood?
Probably every few months. I have a blood test from a company that tells me what I need to correct.
And how extensive is this blood test? Like, is it a standard one that a normal person can
thanks
get,
for the
or do you
follow.
have to have a prescription to get this?
You
It's
can
American
go
Dream
online and get it.
roleplay.
It's about
ADRP?
40 parameters they measure. Some that are not standard that your doctor
I
wouldn't
think it's
do,
empty
some are
right
pretty
now,
standard.
but yeah, I'm just the only
but what's
person
nice
here.
is
It's
it's
normally
a tracking system.
it's normally
called Inside
populated. It's
Tracker,
just
and
like
you
6:30.
can see over time if things are going
on
up.
the East
And even
Coast
if they're not out of
of,
range yet, you can see
North
if they're
America,
headed that
so-
direction and correct it before it's too late. So that's why one of the reasons I'm on metformin, my blood glucose was going up and up and up, which predicts lower life. And so metformin got it back down to where it was optimal again.
So that's one of the things that metformin does, is it lowers your blood glucose?
That's what it's prescribed for diabetics.
Now, does that have any effect on your energy levels?
I don't think so. I haven't noticed that.
Where you would notice it is during rigorous exercise.
That makes sense.
Do you feel it?
Well, so I take metformin at night,
Mhm.
so that may be probably the best thing.
Right, so when you're sleeping, it's having its effect, and it's run its course by the time you wake up, you believe?
Yeah.
Now, when you are exercising, are you exercising fasted, or do you take a certain amount of carbohydrates before you do any kind of physical exercise?
So I start at the gym 2 p.m. on a Sunday, and I'll have a salad wrap or something like that, so I'm not feeling hungry during it and I won't pass out.
Huh. And so I understand that you're getting these blood tests, but do you have a trainer? Do you set a workout, or do you structure it?
I do now. Just recently got a trainer. It's a great thing to do with your son, father-son time. So yeah, we have an hour of trainer, and then we also do a bit of boxing And then we
Beat
go.
your kid up? You beating your son up?
Yeah, it's fun. It's legal, I think. Go to the sauna, and then that's just the best way to spend a day.
That is a nice way to spend a day. So, how many days a week are you doing this? So do you give yourself days off? Do you schedule that?
Well, so once a day of that, once a week on a Sunday. And during the week, if I have a chance and I'm not traveling, I go to the home gym.
And when you say you run once a week, is that by design that you only give yourself once a week?
I'd probably run 2 times a week, high intensity, if I could, and I try to do that. Often I'm on a plane or.
Right. And when you say high intensity, are you sprinting, doing track work, like what kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I'm not an expert. So what I do is I will spend about half an hour on one of those treadmills that's.
I'm kind of just like AFKing right now.
Yeah, I got one of those out here.
Yeah,
they're great.
They are. So that you determine your speed. So I'll sprint.
Just bear with me.
Slow down, sprint, slow down.
People
They're
should be on
actually
soon.
more
I think. People normally
difficult
come
than
on around
running
like
on a flat
7.
surface. It's where a regular treadmill is actually easier than running because the treadmill's moving. You're just kind of lifting your legs up and keeping moving. With this, actually, you're powering it. So by you pushing on it, it's actually more. It's like running. I forget what the degree incline is, but it's like an X amount percentage harder than a regular run.
Oh, good. Well, that's what feels good to me. And although it's a little bit scary if you're not used to these treadmills, you can run off the front because they're free flowing, go right off the tip.
Yeah, but they have handles.
Oh yeah.
You're a genius. You're not gonna go flying off the treadmill like a dummy.
I'm no genius, especially when it comes to sport.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of those things, and it's nice too because there's a lot of give to them. There's not much pounding when you run on those. It's not like running on hard surface.
Yeah, so I try to go easy on my joints. You've probably all seen sports players with all sorts of damage to joints and their brain.
Yeah, I've done all of it.
Yeah. So yeah, low impact, high intensity.
And as far as weightlifting, like what kind of stuff are you doing there? Because weightlifting does have a beneficial effect on bone density, and it supposedly has an effect on anti-aging as well.
Yeah, absolutely believe in that. And so I try to maintain some muscle mass. It's good for burning fat too. So I try to do not go overboard with the bench presses. Otherwise, I'll have even more rounded shoulders. Try to get the straight back. So the trainer is helping me bring my body back into shape. He took one look at me and he said, "You did this unsupervised. Yeah, you wrecked your body in your 20s. Let's try to fix that." Yeah.
What did he say you were doing wrong?
I said, why would you do an exercise on a part of your body you can't see in the mirror?
Oh, your back?
My back is flimsy, and it's all here, so I stand like
you're
this.
You're a smart man. It's protecting your spine.
Yeah, but I love bench pressing.
Oh, God.
At least I used to.
That's a great way to blow your shoulders out, too, though, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, especially if you do it heavy. Now, you do this how many days a week?
Hopefully 2 or 3.
2 or 3 a week. So everything you're doing, you would essentially recommend to others as well, right? So do you think that's a good plan? 2 to 3 days a week of weightlifting, 1 to 2 days a week of running, sauna when you can.
Yeah. So I never use the word recommend. Gets me into trouble.
Yeah, good move.
I just say what I do, and people can judge. But
that's smart.
But the science does say this is the optimal, and that's why I've chosen it for myself. But I think without monitoring yourself, it's easy to overdo it, and also you just really don't know what's going on in the inside. It's crazy to think we know more about our cars as we drive on the dashboard than we do about our bodies. How does anybody know if the exercise is too much, too little, or if that supplement's doing anything?
Right. Well, that is a big problem, right? I mean, one of the things that we have a giant problem in MMA is tainted supplements. People buying supplements, and the supplements have other things in them, and what are you drinking? Do you drink mostly water? Do you consume caffeine?
So with NMN, which gives me a boost, I think, caffeine's a little too intense. So
really?
I find that. So I'll have a cup of coffee in the morning, but that's it.
One a day?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, just to kickstart.
How do you live?
It's hard. It's
living
really
is
hard.
Right. But when you're doing research all the time, don't you need a little boost sometimes?
Well, I do drink Diet Coke or Pepsi.
How dare you? You just ruined everything you said. You doing that?
Yeah, it's my vice.
Isn't that stuff fucking horrible for you?
Is it that bad?
Aspartame's, well, I actually had an inflated idea of how bad it was, apparently, in talking to another research scientist. he was telling me that the actual amount that they gave to rats when they're diagnosing them with cancer is almost impossible for a person to consume. So you would have to have ungodly amounts of aspartame in order to get these effects that everyone's terrified of.
Right.
He said the other thing to take into consideration is look around at how many people are drinking Diet Coke. He goes, if it was really that bad, they'd be dropping like flies. The consideration, though, is upsetting your gut biome, apparently.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
That I know, or at least I've read.
But he said that's also probably large quantities.
It's true. But as you know, the microbiome is a finicky thing, and you don't want to mess with that. It's the reason I have this yogurt in the morning, trying to reset
Boost it
that
up.
thing.
Do you eat kimchi at all?
Yeah, not regularly, but yeah.
That's what about other fermented vegetables or anything along those lines that give you probiotics?
Japanese food I'm into, but I don't think about my diet that often. Usually too busy running around. But
now, have you ever messed around with nootropics or anything like that to enhance your mental clarity or boost your brain power?
Well, yeah, my brain is always running a marathon, right? That's my
Yeah.
career. I definitely noticed that if I take time off, even a weekend, without thinking, I'm dumber on Monday.
Dumber?
Well, yeah, I just can't think.
Really? So, like, it's almost like you need to keep that pace going.
For sure.
Oh.
Right. I guess I'm not a natural genius. I have to work at it. But I do find that constant stimulation, I've got to do that to be at the peak. And this is the tippy peak. This is the genetics department at Harvard Medical School. These are no dummies. These are quarter of them are Nobel Prize winners. And you got to. I mean, a lot of the science we publish is in the world's top journals, which you rarely get into. So to be able to think of these ideas and come up with new things, you can't just do that on a whim. You really have to have a mind that is focused and
in shape.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it is essentially, you feel like running. Like if you take days off, you actually slip back a little bit, and then you have to ramp back up to speed.
It's horrible. I really hate it.
But is it just because you just get used to a lazy pace and you have to acclimate to get back in the lab, or is it actually you do get dumber?
I don't have the memory recall. I feel like I did when I was in my 20s, which is I wasn't as sharp. I'm a lot sharper than I was then. So part of it could be the mental training that I give myself every day. The other part could be the molecules that I'm taking. So NMN, raising NAD, could have neurotropic effects. We don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure. Creatine supposedly has nootropic effects as well. Do you ever take that?
No.
Caffeine certainly does. I'd like to get you some actual nootropics. I'll send you some. There's a bunch of different ones that I use. I use 3 different companies. One that's one of mine, and 2 that are other companies, Neuro One, and another one called True Brain, and I find them pretty beneficial.
Great, I could do with that.
Yeah, it'll definitely. Well, the one that we've tested was Alpha Brain. We tested the Boston Center for Memory. They did a double-blind, placebo-controlled study. It showed increase in verbal memory, increase in reaction speed, reaction time. But the other one's paracetam. Have you ever messed with any of those? No. Choline. You ever supplement with that? No. Interesting.
Right. I could be smarter, I guess.
Well, I don't think it's that. It's just it's not smarter. I don't think anything makes you smarter. I think knowledge makes you smarter. What it does is gives you access, I think, to something that's already in your head.
Good.
A little smoother.
Good. The recall is important. The other thing, as a scientist, what you need to see 1,000 different sets of data and put them into one thing and see the connections. So I'm exposed to so much information. It's drinking from a fire hose every day. I'm reading papers. I'm talking to dozens of people. I've got dozens of companies, got 2 labs in the world. It's just coming in, and for my brain to take it in, sort it out, finds links between them, connect that person with that politician, with that person in the military. It's all going on, and a regular brain that isn't trained would have a hard time.
Yeah, I would imagine. I'm so shocked that you only drink 1 cup of coffee a day with that kind of schedule.
So the NMN is good.
Do you take NAD in an IV form?
No.
No, I haven't, but I've talked to many people that have. I've been scheduling it or wanting to schedule it, putting it off for weeks, but I'm going to do that soon because I just know too many people that have had extreme benefits from it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Do you know anyone that's done it? No? That seems like something would be right up your alley.
Yeah, you'd think. I've just been more focused on curing aging.
But NAD does have supposedly some sort of an effect on aging, correct? IV NAD?
I don't know about IV NAD.
No?
It's been poorly studied, actually. There's a lot of anecdotes, and I hear about these all the time. But I haven't seen really hardcore double-blind placebo-controlled trials.
Now, NAD in supplemental form, though, in terms of orally ingested NAD?
Well, so if you give NAD to an animal or a cell, it's taken up really poorly. NAD is a big molecule. NMN is a smaller version of NAD that gets into cells quickly. So that's probably a difference.
So it's the same benefit, but it's easier consumed orally?
Well, I think so. I mean, we're still at the cutting edge of figuring out what's true and what isn't, but NAD is thought to not be well absorbed in the body as compared to these other smaller molecules that the body then turns into NAD once it gets in.
How much water do you drink?
Not enough. Not enough. I was just speaking with some members of Tom Brady's team, and they said, David, you got to drink more.
Tom Brady's team?
Yeah.
You mean his like physical team? You don't mean like the Patriots?
No, his CEO of his company.
Oh, okay. And they're saying you need to drink more, and you went and got. See, it's like suggestion. I'm drinking some now.
Yeah,
too.
I'm drinking a lot more. Then you end up just going to the bathroom half the time. But
you gotta do what you gotta do.
You do. It makes sense to me. Having a buildup of toxins in your body and urea isn't a good thing.
Right. Do you take anything else that is notable?
Well, I can run you through it.
Sure.
I'm on a statin for
Why are you on
high
a statin?
cholesterol. I've been on a statin since I was in my 20s.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That stuff's fucking terrible for you.
Right. So my good friend and colleague George Church at Harvard told me I'm killing myself, but I have really high cholesterol. My family
genetically,
yeah.
And does your family have a history of heart disease because of this?
Yeah. So my grandmother, at least according to her, had a stroke in her 30s, and then it's bad. So I'm fighting bad Ashkenazi Jew genes here.
That's crazy. So you've been on them since you were in your 20s. And you're a thin man. If anybody looked at you, they would never think that you would have an issue.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. But I'm a doctor's worst nightmare. First of all, I teach them, so I know what they're like. But also when I go into the doctor's office, I say, here's what we should be doing, or you should be doing to me. So I went in my 20s and I said, I want to go on a statin. And this is in the days when statins weren't well studied. And my doctor said, but you're not old. And I said, I don't want to wait till I'm old and sick to get this medicine. I need it now. And I fought the doctor, and eventually he prescribed it, and my cholesterol came down. I'm the same with dentists. I went to the dentist a few months ago, and I said, I want my teeth fixed, my two front teeth. And she said, they're fine, normal wear and tear. And I said, I don't care what's normal. Fix my teeth, get them back to how I was when I was 20. No, we don't do that. We don't do that. Well, you did my daughter, right, last week? Yeah, but she's young. She's got a future.
They were
bloody
saying
hell!
you're already done.
Don't be ageist.
What was wrong with your teeth?
Oh, they were wearing out, and I hated feeling that worn out.
Wearing out.
You don't get
in
that?
what way?
Just getting shorter and flatter and.
What the fuck? You eating rocks?
Yeah, I must be. It's the Australian diet.
A lot of sand in your food?
Yeah, so I said to her, I thought you were one of the world's best dentists. And she said, okay, fine, I'll do it, but don't blame me if it doesn't work. And so
doesn't work?
Well, she was worried that it might snap off or not.
So she's putting a cap on you?
Yeah, she's extending my two front teeth.
But that's normal. Like, people get caps all the time.
Well, it's not a cap. It's actually just material stuck to the tip right there.
Oh, just on the tip?
Yeah,
so like if you had a chipped tooth, they would do that instead of replace the actual tooth
That's what they did to my daughter.
Yeah.
Right? And I said, do that to me. That looks great. And she said, no. Finally, she said, okay, but it's your problem. You got to pay for it. Fine. And she did it, and she actually said at the end of it, this is great. I might offer this as a procedure to other patients. But my point is not about teeth. It's the medical profession is ageist. They give young people certain treatments because they're young, and they don't give them to the old. But then they don't give the young people the treatments that they need before they get old.
Yeah.
It's wacky.
I had a similar thing happen with a torn meniscus. I have a minor meniscus tear. And the guy told me, well, if you were young, they would stitch it up and hope that it would heal. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? I go, everything works good. Like, what is the difference? What is the difference between me and a younger body? And he said something about blood flow. You have more blood flow. I said, look, I'm not a doctor, but that doesn't make any sense. I go, I'm working out all the time. There's a lot of blood going through there. Like, what the fuck is happening? And I'm like, let's just shoot some stem cells in there and see what's up. Because they wanted to do a meniscus, what is it, meniscopy, whatever what they call it, when they cut some of the meniscus out. I'm like, yeah, let's just try. It's totally working. Like, I don't have any pain in it now. So I think there's a weird thing that they do when you get to a certain age. They're like, like I have a friend who has a torn ACL, and he's in his 50s, like late 50s, and they essentially told him not to fix it. I go, hey, fucker, get it fixed. What are you, crazy? You gonna have a wobbly knee? And they're like, well, they told me if I was younger, fuck that doctor. Go get that thing fixed. He's like, well, the recovery time, like, shut up. You just recover. You're alive. A year goes by, it's fixed. Just stop. Just go get it fixed.
Yeah. See, that's the problem with today's society, because we think a 50-year-old is over
Dead.
the hill. That's
dead.
That's BS. 50 is still very young. Actually, there are 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds, even 90-year-olds still playing tennis.
Yeah.
Loving life. That's just the beginning of what's coming.
If you maintain activity. That seems to be the key. The really hard thing is when someone's in their 50s and they want to get in shape now, and they haven't been active their whole life. That seems to be a problem.
Their DVD is scratched up.
Yes.
It's hard to go back. Yeah.
It can be done, though. I did see a guy who was 58 years old who started running marathons at 58. In his 70s, he's running sub-3-hour marathons. And he looks great.
Exactly.
So he just had to take his time and really be dedicated and watch his diet, nutrition, and next thing you know, this guy's an elite marathon runner.
It is doable. What we find in the lab is if we treat mice early in life, it gives them much better lifespan extension.
Sure.
So don't ever leave it too late.
Well, you see that with athletes, like athletes that were fit when they were young and never lost it, really maintained and stayed in the gym and stayed active. You see them in their 50s and even their 60s looking great. Whereas, it's just once your body deteriorates, it's very difficult to bring it back. But if you maintain it, it seems like there's people today that are doing that, and it's much more common. If you go to a gym, for instance, go to a nice gym, you'll see a lot of folks that are in their 60s and 70s that are really active, and they're there all the time, and they're regulars at the gym, and they look great.
They do. So my father is a prime example of that. So he's in Australia, and he's been taking care of his body since he was in his early 40s. Probably a little too late, but still. He's been taking some Enoman and some metformin for a while, resveratrol. But he's been active. That's the key, I think. And then, so that combination, so he's now just turning 80 this year. You would think that he's 30. If you didn't know his age, he's running around. My mother passed away from cancer, so he's dating women. He's out every night. He's traveling the world. Now, this is the future for people in their 80s. He started a new career.
At 80?
It was at 76.
What's he doing?
He got bored. So he retired at 67, thought he had another 10 years of good life, and he kept going and going and going. His friends are getting frail. He's still active. So he went back and he's working at Sydney University on the ethics panel for clinical trials and other studies. And that's what you want older people with wisdom and knowledge to do, to give back.
That sounds good, too. Like, for you get your dad hopped up on all these awesome new drugs. Then you get him working on the ethics panel for clinical studies. And then you get him to give you some death row patients so you can try it on, right? Ethics.
You're onto me.
Yes, I know what you're doing now, man. You're wiggling the system a little bit with your
keep it in the family.
Hyperactive, super healthy dad.
Right. Well, I don't recommend anything even to my family, but they end up demanding it. My brother was pretty upset that we weren't giving him any.
Well, it seems like it's working out really well for your father. I mean, so metformin, the NMM, and what else does he take?
It's Control S.
He's also on a statin, and he exercises. That's the main.
So he's on a statin as well because he has the same predisposed condition.
Right.
Yeah. That's an awful condition, man. That
Like
I mean,
S's
one of
and
the things that I was
Sierra.
talking to my doctor about. He was saying that
Control? You gotta
that
hold control as well.
There are people that just have high blood pressure or higher, higher blood pressure or higher instances of heart disease in their family, and it's just a really unfortunate genetic issue.
It is. But fortunately, we're able to tackle heart disease pretty well.
Yeah.
These days with blood pressure drugs and cholesterol drugs.
Yeah.
There are some side effects, no question. But what we're talking about with these longevity drugs that are in development is that, sure, you can be prescribed this medicine for your Alzheimer's or for your liver disease, but as a side effect, it'll keep the rest of your body healthy as well, protect you against cancer and all these other things. So that's what's so radical about what we're doing.
Now, what about CRISPR, and what do you think is going to come out of that in terms of like real world application for an adult? I mean, what if people don't know what CRISPR is? Please explain it in layman's terms.
Yeah, so CRISPR is a term, actually was invented in my department partly, so I know it pretty well. It's bacteria have an immune system that cuts invaders, cuts their DNA. And what we've done now, as scientists, we've now utilized that system, take it out of the bacteria, and we use it to create designer mutations, designer gene changes in animals and also in humans. So it's a bacterial immune system that corrects genes, and we use it all the time now. It's actually, what's interesting about it is we've been able to mutate genes for many years, but this is dial up a gene mutation. You can choose exactly where you want to make it. And so I think many of your listeners will know that recently, late last year, a Chinese researcher in our field came out and said he's engineered a couple of twin girls with CRISPR to be resistant to HIV, the AIDS virus.
Wow. If they're telling you that, you got to think they're doing some stuff they're not telling you about, right?
Well,
You're gonna
yeah.
have some kids with giant heads and
Well, it's coming.
see through walls, read
Yeah.
minds.
Well, yeah, if you start to see people that are 90 and they're still as young as 20, you know something's going on.
Yeah, that's the weird one, right? If you can, you'd go, hey, what are you doing? Nothing. Just eating healthy, looking good. Take care, bye.
That's right.
They're not going to tell you.
Yeah. Well, so consider this: so the chance of getting HIV in China is 1 in 1,000. So that doctor was seemingly, he thought he was ethical, protecting the babies from something that's, I would say, really rare.
Right.
Whereas, if you really wanted to do something helpful to those kids, and we agreed it was something you should do, why not make them resistant to heart disease or to cancer?
Right.
We can do that. It was weird that he chose HIV as the first test.
Why do you think they did that?
I think because it was a very well understood mutation that would, if you just destroyed the gene, it would work. Whereas with these other diseases, you have to be much more precise. But the reason that we scientists got really upset was that he did it in secrecy and then just launched it on the world. And that kind of thing, because it's a fine line in ethics, you want to be doing that with total transparency.
Right.
And I think he was hoping to become, win a Nobel Prize or be a star, and it backfired on him because he just did it in secrecy.
It backfired in the scientific communities?
Absolutely. In the real world, in the media, I was shocked how little discussion there was. If this news came out in the 2000s during the Bush era, there would have been panels, investigations. It would have been in the news for months, but it wasn't. People went, what's next on Twitter?
Do you think it's just because the news cycle is so insane?
I do.
Yeah. When you have a scientific experiment of that nature, what's the standard protocol for a scientist? Whether is it the same in China and in Russia and in the United States? Does the scientific community almost operate under different, like a different set of rules than anything else?
You mean between countries? Or?
Yes. I mean, like obviously technology is not shared. Like if China is doing something technologically, the United States is. We have to speculate. We have to figure it out. But when it comes to medical science,
right,
is it sort of an open book? Is everybody sharing information?
No.
Or at least alerting everyone to what they're working on? Or?
Well, I know where you're going with this. At least I think I do.
Okay.
So I advise governments around the world about what's going on under the radar, as best I know. And there are countries, I'm not going to name them, that are doing research under the radar and are preventing people like myself from entering those buildings to have a look at what's going on.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that what's going on in there is actually a little bit broader than what we hear about. But I don't know how long is it before a
Did
mother...
you just say Russia?
No, I didn't say Russia.
Okay.
I didn't say anything. No country. I want to be able to travel
I
freely.
heard you say Russia.
But
I said it.
But in countries where there are different standards, what's stopping a mother who wants to prevent their child from having heart disease, which could kill their child, 40% chance versus 1 in 1,000, and eventually, you could make a child that could live 200 years. Once we know how to do it, that could be the future.
There's always a concern that someone is doing something that is beneficial in one way but negative in another way, and if everyone doesn't get to examine the research, it's very difficult. Like if we wanted to, in the United States, wanted to do something similar to what they're doing over there, we would want to have access to what they've learned, right?
We would, and so generally scientists share information.
Right.
But there are companies that are government-owned that are very secret.
Right.
Or even private organizations, and that's where it's a little tricky. And that's why we scientists get really upset when companies or organizations don't share information.
Especially in something this critical.
Right. And what's not really stated, but it's my belief, is that one of the reasons there was such a backlash against this CRISPR design a baby experiment, and it really was an experiment, it's not just that it was potentially dangerous and you could end up with kids that have deformities, but also that unless we do this in a measured manner under supervision, there could be a backlash, like there was against stem cell research in the 2000s. We don't want that again. We want to be able to do this the right way this time.
Right. Is it particularly if something goes wrong with those children?
Right. One person could ruin it for millions of people.
Right. If they jump the gun and so we're on the second generation of CRISPR. Is that correct? In terms of the editing tools, they've become more.
They have. There's surprisingly that there's a lot of different bacteria.
Santa Claus jacket. It's
that
kind of
have
festive.
These systems.
What
So
a
we're
festive
getting
prostitute.
new ones all the time. Some that are accurate, because you don't want what we call off-target effects. You don't want to accidentally mutate some gene that's required for head development. And so I think in my department we're on 4th generation.
Fourth
now.
generation.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. See, I'm just going by Radiolab podcasts.
Yeah. So my department's a fun department to be in.
I would imagine.
They are
That's
inventing
amazing.
all sorts of stuff.
What did you ever see the documentary Icarus?
Oh, yeah, rings a bell.
It's Brian Fogel's documentary on the Russian doping program, state-sponsored doping program in Sochi, the Sochi Olympics, and how they this incredibly complicated system of stealing the urine and putting it through a hole in the wall and putting fake urine back through. It was really, really amazing. Amazing documentary. But details this incredibly complicated state-sponsored doping system. I would imagine that with something like CRISPR or some various new forms of genetic editing, that's one of the things that they're going to be looking into. That they're going to be looking into things that are going to enhance athletic performance.
Yeah, I mean, you might need to have a DNA test to see if you've put one of these viruses in your body.
Right.
And why are you 50 and now you're running like a 20-year-old?
Right.
So that's all possible. You know, I also write reports for governments, and one of the things that I predicted within the next 15 years was CRISPR being used to engineer the human genome and make a baby. I didn't realize it was going to happen within 1 year.
Wow.
A lot of these technologies that I'm trying to predict happen way faster than even I think are going to happen.
Do you think it's possibly happened in other circumstances that they're not going public with?
It's always possible. There may be some human clones running around right now that we don't know about.
Do you think so?
It's certainly doable scientifically. There might be some rogue nation who's doing it. Barbara Streisand's dogs were pretty easy to clone.
Yeah, she had her dogs cloned, right?
Yeah. Sammy, the 14-year-old dog, is now. There's 2 of them.
Jesus Christ. That's so weird. That'd be like I'd be so scared. I'd go to sleep and wake up, and that thing would be hovering over my face, with like glowing eyes.
Yeah, wait till you have designer
Pet
dogs.
Cemetery.
A friend of mine, Colin, at Stanford, entertaining the idea of making dogs live longer genetically. So why would you want your family member to only live 12 years?
I think about that, man. My dog's only 2, and he's such a sweetie. You know, I'm sad that one day. I mean, I had to put my other dog down recently, and who's 13, and he's just really. He was a mastiff too, and he was struggling. And I just think, man, this 2-year-old one day he's going to be in that same sort of situation.
Well, it is, and so we have 3 dogs. My wife runs a therapy dog organization.
Barbara Streisand had her beloved dog Samantha cloned. That crazy bitch. Look at her.
2 copies of one dog.
Jesus Christ, that's so strange. How about just get a new dog, you fucking nut?
Well, so we might be nuts in my household because we're giving our dogs NMN.
Oh, and how's it doing? How old's the dog
So
now?
far so good. What the oldest dog is 9 and he's still doing fine.
Does he look different?
My wife says so. These are anecdotes. I'm not going to publish them, but so ours is a therapy dog, and he has to go to hospitals and nursing homes. And if he has NMN, according to my wife, he can't be a therapy dog because he's too excited. He's running around, jumping around.
Really?
So that's anecdotal, but that seems to fit with what others have experienced too.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're hoping to have some treatments for some pets shortly. One of the companies that I'm working with.
Treatments for pets. Yeah. Well, you got to think, hey man, dog's only going to live 13 years anyway. You know?
Well, yeah, and also we have a dog that has a kidney defect, and the vet says it's only going to live 5 years. So she's 3 now. So
that's the one you're experimenting on.
Well, we experiment on all of them, but but what's the downside?
That's got to be so uncomfortable for some people listening to this right now. Like, oh, I don't know how to feel about that. Right? What is the downside? If your dog has got a kidney defect and it's only going to probably live to be 9, meanwhile that dog's going to live to be 1,000 years old.
Well, we'll see. I'll come back and let you know.
Be in the lotus position meditating 100 years from now. What do you do if it starts talking to you?
That'd be great.
Yeah, what do you do if you turn a dog into some new kind of thing that lives 30 or 40 years? What do you tell people? Like, if your dog, like right now you're talking about it on the podcast, and a bunch of people are probably going to remember, but a lot of people forget. But if like 15, 20 years from now, your dog's still chasing balls and people are going to come over your house, hey, Dave, what the fuck's going on with your dog, man?
Right.
Is that the same dog?
That's Charlie, yeah.
How come Charlie doesn't have gray hair anymore, man?
Right. Well, you know, people
You
ask
don't have
me...
any gray hair.
No.
Yeah, man, that's weird, isn't it? You don't have any?
That's weird, right?
How long have you been on this stuff?
Well, resveratrol I started 12 years ago. Metformin about 3 years ago, and man about the same time.
Wow. Does anyone in your family have gray hair? Is it a genetic issue?
My father has all gray hair. My brother's about a third gray to half gray.
Wow. Is your brother taking the stuff you're taking?
Only recently.
Aha. Interesting.
Yeah, we call that an N of 3 in an experiment, which is insufficient.
Right.
So I don't want to get slapped on the wrist by Harvard Medical School saying
I'm
this
the
is a study.
dummy who's saying all these things. You're just answering questions, sir. Do not worry.
Right. But so far, so good. If I'm around in another 100 years, we'll know something's odd.
That would be unbelievably fascinating if your dog lived to be like 30 or 40 years old. That would be really incredible. And if I meet you in 15 years and you still have dark hair, I'll be like, what? What the hell, man? What other things are you taking? Do you take multivitamins?
I take vitamin D.
That's it?
With K2.
Just vitamin D?
Yeah.
What about E or K or any of those?
Well, K2 and D together, and that's it.
Oh.
So I'm afraid of iron.
Afraid of it?
Yeah.
Why?
There's some results that I've seen that excess iron, especially in the elderly, leads to senescence of cells. And build up of those zombie cells is a bad thing.
And is this dietary iron, like from vegetables, or is it from cooking on a cast iron pan? Or
Well, I only know from correlation. So I'm looking at tissue that's full of iron, and the cells are not looking good. So all I can think is I don't want to overload myself.
My legs,
So this is
to run over my legs.
like,
You asshole.
How much iron is too much iron?
We don't know yet.
Because I always hear it, especially from women, iron deficiencies. For some reason, I've heard it from several women.
Sure. But for the elderly, overloading them with iron, I think, is a real problem.
So there's a sweet spot to hit.
Well, yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure there is, but the iron will damage your cells pretty badly, so you don't want to go overboard.
And no other supplements.
No, I
Maybe
try to
like
eat
card
vegetables,
game?
which hopefully will
Right.
make sure I'm not deficient in anything.
Green, leafy, dark vegetables. and
Exactly. Fresh if I can.
Colorful things.
Straight out of the
yeah.
fridge. Instead of going for a piece of cooked meat, I'll go for a carrot or something. I eat so many carrots I probably turn orange.
Now, carrots have a lot of sugar.
Wowee.
Oh, great. Now I got to cut out my carrots.
Well, I mean, especially if you drink them in the juice form.
Yeah.
Like, I know a lot of friends who really enjoy fruit juices and vegetable juices. And I always say, well, I mean, vegetable juice, yeah, it's probably great. But fruit juice, man, drinking a big glass of orange juice, you might as well be having a Coca-Cola.
Yeah, I agree. So our household has a ban on smoothies and fruit juices and sodas that have sugar in them.
God, I used to be able to go to, like, Jamba Juice and get one of those big old smoothies and feel like you're doing something good for your body. I used to think, yeah, look at I got all this blueberries in there and great stuff. But meanwhile, there's just a gang of sugar in that thing.
Yeah, I heard an interesting thing that whole milk is actually potentially better for you than the low fat.
Oh, yeah.
You'll use less of it, and it does. Milk has some sugar in it.
It's also attached to fat, right? The whole milk has fat in it, and it's normal. It's normal for your body to consume it that way.
Right. What I want is I want my money back from the nutritionists in the 1970s and 80s. Right? I skipped eggs and bacon.
Right.
Could have been eating that stuff.
Well, you remember that food pyramid that used to be in the Dr. Seuss books? You're teaching kids to eat cereal. It's so crazy.
And put margarine on your bread.
Oh, that's the best. That's the best bad advice that they ever gave. Vegetable oils, which are fucking terrible for you. All those disgusting vegetables, safflower and corn oil, all that stuff that's just terrible. Terrible for you.
It is. The other thing that mothers used to, and to some extent still tell their kids is, don't go hungry. Have a snack.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say mothers, parents in general, but in my family, it's my wife. She hates to see our kids go hungry at all.
Right.
So it's always eat, never be hungry. And I'm there saying, no, be hungry, it's good for you. And it's this
Is that
tension.
the same with children, though? Because children are growing. I always assume that children, they should just eat whenever they're hungry.
Well, that's what's stated. I'm not sure if that's the case. Often my son is... So my son isn't thin, put it that way.
Damn it.
And he'll be going out the door and my wife will say, have you had breakfast? No, I'm not hungry. You have to eat something. And I'm thinking, no, you got plenty of energy stored there. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. The only thing that I think of is that when you're a young person, your body is still actually growing and developing. As opposed to you and I, if we're fasting, it makes sense, right? It makes sense you're giving your body a break, and there's all sorts of proven benefits to that fasting process. And
well, if you have a child who's overweight, is it a bad thing to skip a meal?
No, it's not. The one thing that worries me about children that are overweight skipping a meal, though, is that they're not as disciplined and they're not so good psychologically with struggling and having, having hunger pangs, and that you're going to fuck their head up.
It's true. The teachers will probably be very angry with me that the kids can't concentrate.
Well, it's not just that. Yeah, the kids can't concentrate, but I worry that it's in some way, shape, or form abusive. Like to say, hey, you're overweight, you need to lose weight. Like I don't think they're really designed to go without the way a grown adult does. These are my own perceptions. I think that it's probably far better to adjust their diet. And if you've got a kid, just slowly get their body weight down with exercise, particularly with resistance training and doing things that really burn off a lot of calories, and then just get them off the sugar. And then I think the weight will slowly slip off. Probably not even so slowly if you can really get them off a significant sugar binge.
Exactly. So that's why I'm taking my son to the gym as well. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm just to clarify, because I don't want a bunch of hate mail. All I'm saying is don't force feed a kid.
Yes. Yeah, don't force feed a kid. Yeah, I agree with that. But I just think that kids, they just get so fucking hungry, man. They get, because their little bodies are like little hummingbirds. They're burning so much energy.
Yeah, they do.
I'm amazed you don't take any other supplements. Just vitamin D. No multivitamins. You don't want to like cover all your bases. No whole food supplement like vitamin or a plant-based supplement that you could take during the day.
No, none of that. You know, I subscribe to the idea that a lot of it's expensive urine. And you know, I'm testing myself, so I know if I'm deficient in something bad, and all my vitals are close to optimal. So if something's out of whack, I'll see it probably.
So you were saying you do things for the government. What do you do?
Did I say that?
Yeah, you said that earlier. You said I should ask you.
Oh no, I didn't.
Yeah, you did.
No, I didn't.
Before the show started.
Well, this was outside. I was feeling frisky. Now that I've thought about it, I want to go to jail.
Okay.
I'll talk about it. The
I don't want to
idea-
get you in trouble. So let's pause and think this for a moment. Are there things that you can't talk about? Please don't.
There's a lot to talk about. I just have to make sure it's nothing that's confidential. But there's a lot of interesting stuff going on the planet. There's areas of biodefense that are pretty scary. So some nations are apparently working on using CRISPR and other gene editing systems and modifying bugs that could wipe out a few 100 million people pretty quickly. What do you do? How do you detect that? Even the flu, that's a massive bio-threat, and it may just be natural. And that could wipe out another 100 million people like it did exactly a century ago. So I work on that stuff, detecting viruses, wiping them out, cleaning a room of DNA, making sure that everything's clean. So I'll give you an example. So the Navy SEALs came up to my lab, and they'd like to ask our group to solve some hard problems. And so the problem they set us on was, how do you kill anthrax safely? Now, right now it's very difficult to kill, of course. When the anthrax letter was open in the Senate, what was it, a number of years ago, it cost $25 million. They had to seal it off and put hydrogen peroxide all over everything, destroy the computers. So they're wondering, how do you kill anthrax safely so that you don't have to be in a hazmat suit to do it? And so what we came up with after thinking about it for about a week was we need a biological solution, not a chemical. And so we found an organism that its whereabouts I cannot disclose, but it's a very interesting organism that grows at high temperature. And it destroys all bacterial and viral life. And it wipes it out, and it doesn't hurt humans at all. There's, or at least in animal studies, you can breathe it in, you can put it anywhere, and it's fine. So this is a cocktail of enzymes that destroys the microbes, including anthrax.
So it doesn't have any effect on humans, but what about the bacteria that lives in our body?
Well, we haven't eaten it yet. What we're hoping to do is to do a clinical trial soon on removing biofilms. So in the wounds of patients, the reason they don't heal very well, especially these diabetic chronic wounds, that, by the way, that every 10 minutes someone's losing a limb thanks to that. These biofilms, you have to digest them off. And do you know how they do it right now? They scrub them off. It's horrific. Then they cut the skin, and they keep cutting, and eventually you lose a limb. This looks really promising in animal studies, that we should be able to not just kill the bacteria in the wound, which is a problem, but get rid of that biofilm.
That's amazing. So things like MRSA, staph infections.
Exactly.
So you'll be able to stop it in its tracks before it gets systemic.
Right. Spray this stuff on a cruise line for the virus, norovirus. Even if it turns out to be that safe, why not just wipe down schools?
Oh, because I always worry about the negative aspect, like what's going to happen, like what's going to be the blowback, right? Like antibiotics is what's created medicine-resistant antibiotic staph infections, right?
Right. Your mind always jumps to the worst possible
That's
scenario.
me, bro.
Love it. We'd make a good team. So I'm the
like
optimist.
a buddy cop movie.
Yeah, let's do it. So we've tested, does it induce antibiotic resistance? And so far, it's negative.
Okay, interesting.
Oh, another thing I'll tell you. So I work with a company that detects organisms. So we want to detect if there's another virus coming across the planet. So how do you do that quickly? And how do you do it if you don't know what you're looking for? So we can take a drop of blood or a swab off a table, and we can see all the organisms that are there.
That fucked my
we can
day
do
up right
microbiome,
there.
but that's
Let's
easy.
know.
We can do so a drop of blood will tell you all the bacteria and viruses in there, and it'll tell you how to kill it, which is great for healthcare because right now microbiology labs. I've worked in one. I used to swab urine and poop on plates. It was very glamorous. That's how it's still done. That's 19th century, early 20th century technology. Grow it on a plate, wait a few days, see what grows. But that's useless for diseases like viruses and Lyme disease. Lyme disease, you know, the one from ticks in your spine. My daughter got Lyme disease, and she was really sick. She was losing her eyesight. It was serious. It got into her brain, and the hospital wouldn't give her the antibiotic because the tests weren't quick enough, and they wouldn't give her the antibiotic until the tests were positive for insurance reasons. And I said, just give me the DNA of my daughter, the spinal fluid. I'll test it. They wouldn't do that. So I was furious. So I spun out a company out of my lab with some very smart bioinformaticians, mathematicians, software engineers. We built supercomputers to be able to do this. Teamed up with a guy in Stanford, my friend, I mentioned him, Carlos Bustamante. He's the guy that did, oh maybe I shouldn't, but he did a famous person's genome recently. He's been trained on mummies, and he did Kennewick Man. And so this technology can be teamed up with what I've done to be able to get rid of all the human DNA out of a blood sample, leave the viruses, leave the bacteria, and then run that through a supercomputer, all the DNA, and tell you within probably seconds, eventually, what it is. So my daughter would have a diagnosis within, eventually it'll be just 10 minutes instead of waiting a week.
Wow. Lyme disease is terrifying. There are so many people that are infected with it, and I know personally maybe 10 people that have it, and a couple that have had significant issues with it that have lasted for years. I know a guy who was hospitalized for a full year on it.
It's really bad, and it can hide as well. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And it wrecks joints, and a lot of countries actually deny that they have Lyme disease. Australia's a good example. People are getting what seems to be Lyme disease, and no one knows if it is or not. Give those samples to us, we'll tell you what's in there.
Well, it seems to be very difficult with certain doctors for them to tell if they don't see that bullseye infection.
Exactly. So our daughter, Natalie, our middle daughter, she didn't have a bullseye. She had nothing. The first thing we knew...
Explain the bullseye to people.
Oh, so it's inflammation around the bite of the tick.
Right.
And
so there's the actual bite, and then there's a circle on the outside of it. And for whatever reason, this occurs with Lyme disease, but oftentimes goes away quickly. So if you bring a person in and they have the Lyme disease, but they don't have that bullseye anymore, which is what happened to my friend Steve's son. He tried to tell them that it was Lyme disease. The doctors were incredulous. They didn't believe him. And it took till the kid had Bell's palsy in his face.
Exactly. That's what happened in our family. It's crazy. And so I was bitten by a tick last year, right behind the knee. And it didn't form a bullseye. Maybe I didn't give it time, but it definitely was a very painful thing. I could tell that there was something going on. It was really itchy. And I went to the pharmacy and I said, can I have the antibiotic? It's probably costs a few dollars for the antibiotic. And they said, no, we won't give it to you till we see a bullseye. And you need to bring the tick in. Well, I didn't bring the tick with me. So again, I'm the doctor's and nurse's worst nightmare. I wouldn't leave until they gave me the antibiotic. And I'm glad, because I don't want to wait
Did they
a week
eventually give it to you?
They did. I wasn't going to leave until I got it. But I don't want to wait a week. I'm starting to lose my...
Did you get
sight.
upset with them? You say, listen, you dumb motherfuckers. I'm super smart. I work with genes.
No,
Super smart.
not that occasion. It's
Motherfuckers.
It's tempting. You can always say, hey, I'm a professor at Harvard. And then they probably just really kick you out.
Yeah. What do you say? I mean, how long did it take before they listened to you?
So I went through, I started spouting biology so that they knew that I knew something about it. It was about 15 minutes.
Oh, that's not bad. Thank
No,
God
that-
you knew what to say.
I
I'd
did.
be there for days. Like, bro, trust me.
Right, let me draw you a picture of the tick.
Yeah, I mean, I would just think they'd want to hand that stuff out quick with so many people getting it. It's so common. I mean, we looked at a map recently on the podcast of Lyme disease infections across the East Coast. And the East Coast of the United States, obviously that's where you live, is just a hotbed. It's crazy. It's everywhere.
Well, it is, and I've got friends on Cape Cod where it's really prevalent.
Really bad.
So bad that they keep the antibiotic in their kitchen drawer.
Jesus. And if you catch it quick enough, does it stop it in its tracks?
Yeah.
So the real problem is when it gets into your bloodstream and you don't treat it long enough or quick enough.
Exactly. And so my daughter needed what's called a PICC line, which is delivery of the antibiotic straight into the heart.
Oh,
because they left it too long.
God, I'd want to kill them.
And she didn't have a ring of inflammation.
But you knew.
I didn't. I thought it was meningitis bacteria in the brain or something.
Oh,
or
God.
leukemia was the other possibility.
Those dirty fucking bugs. What can be done to somehow or another eradicate those things?
Oh, so again, one of my friends, got a few friends here. She was working at MIT, and she's developed a way using the CRISPR system to kill these, as you say, damn little fuckers. And so there is possibly going to be the first test of releasing a modified organism, the Lyme organism, to kill them off.
Wow. And you know that's going to cause some new superbug. It's going to kill everybody. It's going to be like that Brad Pitt movie, the zombie one, World War Z.
Might be, but on the other hand, we might all be saved from Lyme disease.
Yeah, I would like that. That would be great. I mean, where did Lyme disease come from? There was some conspiracy theory website that was thinking that Lyme disease was some sort of a biological weapon.
That's probably bullshit.
I'm sure. But it came out. It was in Lyme, Connecticut, right? Wasn't that one of the first cases?
Yeah.
So that's close enough to Harvard, just to stayed away.
I thought you said Russians were behind it.
Oh no, I said conspiracy theory. I didn't say it was Russian, but it was a biological weapon. It's just an awful thing, and now there's I'm sure you're aware of the Lone Star tick that gives people that alpha-gal disease, the one that makes you allergic to red meat.
Mm-hmm.
Just, I mean, where was that before? It's crazy to see these things morphing and.
Well, they're morphing, and there are a lot of bugs we don't know. Somebody just published a few days ago that they took surveys of the microbiome on the skin, mouth, gut, across the planet, different races, different foods, geography, and they have 100,000 different organisms living on humanity. And most of them are unknown. That's crazy, right?
Right, and all they have to do is just morph a little bit one way or the other way, and all of a sudden, people are dropping like flies.
Yeah, and what's interesting is on the skin and in the gut of people in India is very different than what we have. And the different smells. They probably think we smell bad. But I know this because
they're wrong.
Yeah, right. Cause, yeah, I smell like Old Spice. But these wounds, they're actually, if you want to kill the bacteria in a wound, they're different in the wounds of people in India than they are over here in the US.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. And obviously they have different diets too, so there's probably different things they're used to consuming, and so their gut bacteria is different.
Right, everything's different. Their genomes are different. So we need to map the globe to first know what we're dealing with before we can address it.
God, it just seems like a never-ending struggle.
It every day is a struggle against the natural world. They want to kill us and eat us.
Yeah, everything. The little things and the big things. All of it.
Yeah,
wow.
we're food.
So how much of your time gets consumed with this kind of work?
Well, everything's all consuming. My typical day is going to a company meeting, going to the U.S. government, getting called by a senator for an update. So probably, actually, let me be formal about this. Harvard University allows me to spend 20% of my time outside of the university, so it's 19.9.
Hmm. So you have to cover your ass here? Is that what you just did?
Maybe. But who tracks their time now anymore?
But I would think that with a guy like you, who's so you concentrate so much, you're so focused on anti-aging, that having a gigantic workload would seem to me to be that would be an issue in terms of like overtaxing your system, stressing yourself out.
So nobody's ever asked me that, and it's a really good question. But I'm not really worried about dying. Actually, I'm not worried at all.
At all?
No, it's, you know.
So there's a wolf in the room. He's staring at you. You're not worried
That'd
about
be a
dying.
grisly death. I'd probably not want that. But I've been, I thought I was going to die on aeroplanes before, and I'm pretty calm about that. So I guess that's a good test. But I do want to leave a legacy. I want to be able to say the world's better for me being on the planet. And so that's why I do all this stuff. I try to protect the humanity. I try to protect nature. I'm trying to help with food production. My aging stuff is what I'm known for, but I do a lot of this other stuff that people don't know about.
So
You gotta be careful around these gangsters. They'll fucking
concern
take you out
is
in a heartbeat.
Anti-aging. You certainly want people to live longer, but you yourself are more concerned with your work than you are with your own personal life.
Oh, 100%. My wife will tell you that. The reason that I look after myself as best I can when I've got the energy is it would be a bad look if I died from heart disease tomorrow.
Yes, the anti-aging guy. Well, if you died from anything other than an accident.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm trying to be a role model for others. But you know, if I died tomorrow, that'd be fine with me. I'd like to finish my work at least. I would like to leave something behind, but what I don't want to do is to be a burden on my kids and my grandkids.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm also trying to prevent.
Yeah, that would seem to me to be the real final frontier of anti-aging, is folks that are really, really old, because it seems like they would be open to try almost anything. And if you could bring them back, that would be uber bizarre.
Right.
How far away do you think we are from doing something like that?
Well, it often comes as a shock to people who don't work on this, that we're already testing these molecules in clinical trials on elderly people. I've been doing that for a number of years now with some positive results. Over at Harvard, we were giving NMN and another molecule called MIB626.
What's the other one called? My laundry list. Hold on.
So the company's called Metro Biotech, and it makes super NAD boosters, and the drug is called, developmental drug is MIB-626.
626.
Yeah, and we're hoping that it will not just
So I have to get that
rejuvenate
in
them.
an alleyway somewhere?
Where
do I get that? I gotta go to some shady doctor with a weird accent?
That one we hope to get on the market in about 3 years from now.
Really?
Yeah, for diseases, FDA approved.
And so they're using it right now on old folks?
Testing it for
Testing.
safety, yeah. But we're also going to be testing later energy. We can measure actually the NAD levels, that molecule I just mentioned. We can measure that in their muscles, and we'll test if that worked. And we'll measure, of course, their endurance, because the mice that we treated with NMN, they just ran and ran and ran. They actually broke the little treadmill in my lab because they ran so far.
And you're giving it to them orally, or you're injecting it into them?
It's a little tablet.
They just put it in their food or something like that?
Oh, the mice?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I thought you were talking about the humans. In the mice, we put in their drinking water. Yeah, they just drink it. It's really easy.
Wow. And they have no idea?
No idea. In fact, the people who are running the treadmill have no idea which is which. But we had mice running 3 kilometers, and then the machine stopped. And I get a text from the researcher, hey, the machine broke. And I said, check the software. And it turns out the software was written to stop at 3 kilometers because no mouse had run that far before.
That's long.
And those are old mice. Don't forget,
Yeah.
these are mice that are the equivalent of a 65-year-old human.
Really?
Yeah. And we figured out why they run further. This isn't just try it and see. We figured out that the lining of the blood vessels needs NAD as you get older. Well, they need it all the time, but as you get older, you don't have enough NAD. So the NMN replenishes that and allows the blood vessel lining to respond to exercise, and even grow blood vessels if you don't exercise. And so those mice, they ran and ran and ran. They didn't get lactate buildup as much. They just didn't feel tired.
So they didn't have lactic acid buildup?
Right.
Wow. So muscle fatigue would be different.
Well, they didn't seem to get that either.
Wow.
Because just better blood flow. We even pinched off an artery, and the body responded much better to restoring blood flow, which would be great for patients who have a heart attack.
Whoa. Now, with human beings, what has been the most dramatic result?
That's a hard question because a lot of it's early stage. We developed a molecule that seemed to effectively treat a disease called psoriasis, which is the
Yeah, a friend of
inflammation.
mine has that.
Yeah, so that worked, and that's a molecule
Is it
that's
something you apply to the skin?
It was a pill actually.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And how does that work? What is it doing?
So it's an activator of one of these sirtuins that we found in yeast originally. These sirtuin protective enzymes in the body, and they're anti-inflammatory, and so it worked well against that disease.
So psoriasis has something to do with inflammation?
It is an inflammatory disorder. Yep.
Are all autoimmune disorders or inflammatory based disorders?
I believe so.
Really? Interesting. Because I have vitiligo. You don't see little spots on my skin where I don't have any pigment. It's genetic. My grandmother had it. My grandmother's sister had it. I wonder if that would help me.
Yeah, I really couldn't say.
What's it called again?
Which one? The drug that was tested?
Yeah.
It has a name, SRT 2104.
And this is the stuff that worked on psoriasis?
Yeah, in a small study in New York. Yeah.
Now, what other things had really dramatic results on humans?
Well, we're not there yet. We don't have dramatic results in
Is there
humans yet.
anything promising results on humans other than NMN and?
Yes, there are. So this mTOR I mentioned earlier,
Mhm.
where the drug rapamycin, which is too dangerous to try on normal people, that drug has been tried on elderly people, and it boosted their immune system in the same way that you see with calorie-restricted mice. And so that was an early signal that you might be able to reverse aspects of aging in the elderly with that drug.
Now, with older folks, one thing you see is the body doesn't produce collagen as much. Your skin gets lax and starts to sag. What things could be done to mitigate that?
You mean besides Botox and stuff?
Well, Botox doesn't really do that. It just freezes
Right.
your face like a
It
weirdo.
does. Well, so I'm asked that a lot. Will it, David, don't worry about protecting cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's.
How do I look better?
Can I look better? Yeah, right. And the answer is that A, we don't know. B, we're working on it. We work with a cosmetic company that so far so good. But I don't endorse products. That's not me. But also, what's interesting is that these mice, at least, they stay younger looking as well. They don't just live longer. So there's hope that. So I mean, the skin is a big organ. Okay, so
Right.
why wouldn't it stay young just like the rest of the body?
Well, it's certainly indicative of whether or not a person's healthy, right? If you see someone and their skin is really saggy and fucked up looking, you assume that person's not healthy.
Right. And actually, a lot of us scientists believe that how you look is actually a pretty good indicator of your biological age. Speaking of biological age, there's been a breakthrough the last few years being able to tell your biological age. One part's done by Inside Tracker, looking at blood biomarkers, but there's a new one called the DNA clock. Have you heard about this?
Yes, I have.
So a colleague of mine is well known for it, Steve Horvath, and what it is so you know how DNA, I said, is changing over time, and the epigenome is changing. So these are like scratches on the clock, on the DVD. We think we know what those scratches are, and how to remove them. And what they are little chemicals that bind to the DNA called methyls. And the older you get, the more methyls you accumulate on your DNA. And we can read that with a machine. And we can very precisely say, you're roughly this age, but you're actually older or younger for your chronological age. And now we think we can reverse that.
Wow. How long do you think you are away from doing that? Being able to reverse that?
Well, that's that glaucoma treatment that we're looking at.
I would like to see you take someone like a wealthy Mel Gibson type character and just shoot him up with everything. Like, just get someone who's willing to give you a full run of them and run it like some sort of a science fiction movie.
Tell you what, I'll do it if you'll employ me, because I'll be kicked out of my job if I do it.
I'm sure you would, but man, I mean, it just seems like there's so many promising things. It would be really fascinating if you could document, if you could take one person. It was like a wealthy man in his mid to late 60s.
Yeah. Well, there's this
Or
fringe
woman.
element in anti-aging. In fact, I don't even like the term anti-aging.
What do you like?
Longevity research. We're about to announce, maybe this is a sneak preview for everybody, an academy for aging research of the top, I think 20 scientists in the world are banding together to produce white papers and opinions. But yeah, we call it longevity research, and so anti-aging is more the Botox and that kind of stuff that we don't want anything to do with.
Right, but that's nonsense. It's not really anti-aging. You're not doing anything about aging. You're just freezing your skin so it doesn't move. That to me is one of the weirder things, especially with men. When I see a man and his forehead doesn't move, I want to smack him in the mouth. Like, what's wrong with you, sir? How dare you? Smack. It's not like Botox or fillers or any of those things. You're not doing anything for your health or your actual real vitality. You're just weirdly doing something cosmetic, right?
Yes, you are. And though I think their defense is you feel better if you look better. And psychologically, it might help.
I don't think they look better, though. They just look different.
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem.
It is true. Yeah, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the cosmetic industry for obvious reasons. I'm trying to save humanity and improve the planet. I do think we would be judged as a species if an alien came down and they said,
You're
hey,
shooting botulism in your face? What the fuck
right,
is wrong
right,
with you?
exactly. You are a weird. You're not allowed in the club of advanced species.
Well, that would only be one thing that we were weird from.
Yeah.
You know.
But what would they ask you? They'd ask us, have you figured out the speed of light?
They'd ask me why I have drawings all over my arm. You know.
No, they might appreciate art.
Maybe, but like, they'd be like, why didn't you just get it and then just wash it off or something? Why do you have to get it drilled in your skin,
Yeah,
stupid?
well, that's coming. But I think one of the most important questions they'd ask to tell if we were an advanced nation or advanced species is, have you figured out aging yet?
Right. Deterioration.
Yeah, and you know what? We're so pathetic as a species. Our answer would be, you mean that's a thing? You can do something about that? And they're like, oh, come back in 1,000 years.
Well, I mean, there's got to... how many people do you think worldwide are working in your field?
So in terms of leading labs, there's about 20, 30. Broadly, there's probably a few hundred labs.
And are they all in essentially the same field of study? They're all working with the same molecules and the same parameters?
No, not everyone works with molecules, but what I can tell you is we get together in conferences and we talk about discovering a new gene that extends lifespan and a new molecule that's working in mice or sometimes in humans. But it's a big field now. It's grown. And when I started, it was the backwater of biology, antioxidants, etc. I was very lucky to start when it was really small and stick it out. There was a fair amount of criticism in those days.
What? How so? Like that it was...
Well, like a lot of my friends, my supervisors said I was insane for working on aging. That's not a thing. That's not biology.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Wait, how long ago was this?
So I came to the US from Sydney in 1995, went to MIT, and the scientists in the lab that I joined, Lenny Guarenti's lab, two students had just started working to figure out why yeast get old. And I joined as the third senior person to join. And all the other people in the lab, there were about 18, 19 people, they said, you are nuts. Lenny's lost his mind. He's working on aging. That's not a thing. You should be working on what we do, which is understanding how genes are regulated. So I called up my mum and I said, I think I've made a big mistake here. I thought this was the thing and the guy, and everyone here says he's nuts.
Meanwhile, you were right.
Well, you got to take some risks in life. That's one lesson.
Yeah, but that's an interesting one, right? Because you were a young fellow. You didn't really totally know.
It was pretty lucky because I'm in Australia, right? I don't know what people are saying about this lab until I get there. But I've always been fascinated with aging since I was 4.
Well, now, though, with all the promising new discoveries, I mean, they have to be eating crow, as it were. You ever talk to those people? They go, hey, fuckface, I was right.
No.
You don't call them up in the middle of the night? Drunk?
No, I definitely forgive people too much. I've had some pretty big enemies along the way, but I try to be nice.
Is it because research and this sort of scientific work is so competitive?
Yeah, it is. It is, and there's this belief that someone's success is your failure. It's not really that is the case, but you know,
that exists in show business too. It's a weird sort of a mindset. It's a very limiting mindset.
Right, and also, and this may be true in Hollywood, in science, if you come up with a new idea and you're a young Turk, and you're upsetting the status quo. I don't know, the Thomas Kuhn's book on the structure of scientific revolutions was just had it right. He wrote in the 60s about chemistry and physics, but it applies to biology, that if you come up with a new theory that's that disruptive, the current leaders will attack you, and it's a period of chaos, and you just have to get through it. And fortunately, I'd read Kuhn's book, and I knew that this was normal. But a lot of people around me were saying, oh no, people are saying we're wrong, and it's controversial, we don't want to be controversial. I'm like, controversy is great. Let's do more of that. And if it's not controversial, I don't want to do it.
That is interesting. Do you think that's because the people who are the old guard are upset they didn't find it themselves, or are they upset that your new findings will make their work look irrelevant?
Yeah, it's probably a bit of both, but mostly it's that they're worried that their lives will have been in vain if what they're working on is not true.
Right. Yeah, there's an amazing documentary on the Sphinx where these geologists are talking about some of the water erosion outside the area of the Sphinx, and they're saying this points to the fact that construction was thousands of years older than they thought. And you see this one Egyptologist freaking out. He's freaking out, like, what evidence? What evidence of this culture are you talking about? Like, because apparently it would have predated the known dates of 2,500 BC, would have made it like 7,000 years older than that, because it would have to be back when there was rainfall in the Nile Valley. And you could see this guy's ego kicking in because he was a professor, he had been teaching Egyptology, and he was freaking out. Instead of examining this evidence like, whoa, like talking to this geologist who studies rocks and erosion, who's really steadfast. He's a Boston University geologist, Dr. Robert Schoch. And, you know, he's saying this is evidence of water erosion. And he's, like, showing it. And he even showed it to a bunch of other geologists, and they all agreed. And this guy, this Egyptologist in this documentary, was freaking out. I was like, wow, that's what happens when you think your whole life's work is horseshit.
Yeah, it can be a blow to the ego. I haven't lived through that yet. It's probably coming. But what I've noticed is that the really successful scientists and people in life just embrace change and go with it.
Kind of have to. I mean, it doesn't mean that guy is a loser. It just means he was acting on incorrect information based on what they knew before. I mean, you should embrace it and say, look, well, we know certain things were built at 2,500 BC, like the Great Pyramid. That's been pretty clearly established. But it looks like there were some ancient structures that were there even before then. Now we have new things to study. They don't look at it that way, though.
Yeah, see, the problem with how biology and actually most facts are taught, or theories are taught, is that there's a textbook and that's the Bible equivalent. What I try to teach my students is, can you please just forget everything you've just learned? And what's important to know is that most things we think we know are not correct. They're going to change over time. All theories change. Newton was wrong, but he helped us get here. Expect that we only know 0.01% of what we need to figure out, and a lot of what we think we know is wrong anyway. So even if you have the greatest theory, expect that it will be overturned, but you can at least cherish the fact that you've helped us get to that point, because without Newton we wouldn't have quantum physics.
Well, for someone like me, hearing you say that, it's very promising and it's very encouraging. But I always thought that scientists were always going on just data. Like all they cared about was data. All they cared about is what is correct. And that was what was crucial. That's what's important. This is what they talk about. This is what they study. When I found out that scientists would ignore information or use their own personal biases against information or attack research because it somehow negates what they've done, it's very disheartening. For someone who's not a scientist, you go, oh no, the ego is in science too?
Right. It's disheartening as a scientist, I can tell you. There was a time of great change in the aging field where we discovered genes control aging, and molecules like resveratrol could extend health and lifespan. It was brutal. I'd get up and I'd give a speech and someone would say, "You're wrong, this is crap." And
where are they now? Do you call them up in the middle of the night?
They're still
call them up, you dumb motherfucker.
Along.
Just
right.
Have a couple of glasses of wine.
Yeah. Well, I think the secret to success in life is actually just existing for long enough, and all your enemies just fall away.
Yeah. Well, they die. They're not into anti-aging.
Yeah.
They all look like shit. They can't walk anymore.
Just have to outlive your enemies. Yeah. It's an easy way.
Well, that must have been a tough time, though, for you as a young man, and you're hearing this from these established scientists, and part of you must have been like thinking, like, geez, are they right?
Sure, you have to entertain the possibility that you're wrong. That's what we do. But you go back to the lab and you retest it. So I went through a really brutal period in my career where we had data, we interpreted it, we published it in the top journals, and it was about how resveratrol works on that sirtuin enzyme that I mentioned. And Pfizer came out with a paper that said it's all wrong. And I had people call me up saying, you know, it was nice knowing you, I'm really sad for you, but
it's over.
Yeah, bad luck. And so I went back to the lab. We had some data already from years before, which I knew were interesting. And it took another, I think, 4 years to get to the bottom of it. But it turns out in the end I was right. But there were days when I said, screw humanity, I can't even be bothered getting out of bed if this is how I'm going to be treated for trying to devote my life to the betterment of people's lives.
Wow.
It's tough. I think anybody who's in a position in their career like that has to have gone through really hard times.
It's just discouraging from a non-scientist who relies on people like you. For someone like me who relies on the folks like you out there doing the hard work, that you would face that sort of, I guess the best way to describe it would be ignorance.
Well, it's okay for scientists to challenge a theory. That's what I did and what everybody is trained to do. But to do it in such a public and
vicious,
controversial, it was vicious. It was definitely vicious. Even the words they used were vicious, which is really hurtful. But
they're wrong.
Well, they might have been right.
But they were wrong. Call them up, middle of the night, you dumb motherfucker.
Yeah, the person who published that paper, I do think about meeting that person again. But it,
What are they
it
doing
can
now?
destroy careers. It's not just, it's tough. You can run out of money. Your
Yeah.
students go away.
Sure,
That
yeah.
was happening to my lab. We went down to 4 people. I mean,
And what was the high?
I mean, these days I'm.
But what
before,
were you then?
Before then, it was about 18, 20.
And you went down to 4?
4.
So it was looking bad.
Oh yeah, people had written me off.
Holy shit. But you were right.
Well, you got to push forward. It's you got to get lean because you're not going to get government funding for a while because people think that you're a failure.
God damn. That's crazy.
Well, science is not for the faint of heart.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, boy.
Thick skin, stubbornness. Only those survive.
What was the turnaround? Like, was there a moment where it turned around and moved
There
into your
was.
favor?
Yeah, there was. There was one day when it all changed. So the earlier data. So we're data driven. The early data was that the enzyme, we could mutate or change the enzyme so that it wasn't going to be activated by resveratrol, and we found that mutation. Now that just technically, or non-technically means that we could change the enzyme in a way that wouldn't work. So we then put that non-working enzyme into a cell, and now we have a mouse that doesn't work, and we give it resveratrol, and if it works, it means I'm wrong. If it doesn't work and it's blocked by that change in the enzyme, we're probably right, and that's what we did. But the real change was that there was a company that I started that was making drugs, the one that cured, or at least seemed to cure psoriasis, and they had made these very synthetic molecules that were not related to the plant molecule resveratrol. And so I said to myself and to the student who was working on it, the very brave student, if the change in that enzyme also blocks the drug, then we're on to something, because that means 2 separate groups working on separate types of molecules, different people, different systems, all get blocked by this one little change in the enzyme, then we're right. And so he walked over to the company, got the molecule, threw it on the enzyme, and it didn't work on the mutant. And that was me rejoicing, because I could say there is a universal activation mechanism on this one enzyme. Resveratrol works. The molecules at the company work. And now there's an interesting thing that just came out from Spain, that metformin, the diabetes drug, may actually work the same way as these other molecules by activating our favorite enzyme, the sirtuin.
Wow. And how much time were you in the dark lands?
It was a couple of years of hell. Yeah. Right. It gets so bad because you've got this tight-knit group of scientists, and you have lab meetings and you present your results, and usually you're very supportive, trying to help. I had one guy saying to my student, David doesn't know what he's talking about. You shouldn't work on this. It's been proven wrong. He was dead against me in my own lab. I'm paying his salary. And it's okay to be constructive, but vicious within my own group. Well, suffice to say, he wasn't in my group for that long.
Wow. Now, this other guy that used all these other vicious words about you, where's he at now?
Not sure.
I would know. I would know.
No, I don't have time to look back. I'm looking forward.
You're nicer than me.
Yeah, you know what? In science, because it's very collaborative, and often your enemies are reviewing your own work. If you build up too many enemies, you won't survive. So
no, it's definitely a healthier approach. I'm kidding. I probably would do exactly what you did, but it's got to be beautiful to come out on the other end and be proven correct and actually be at the forefront of these emerging technologies.
Well, it is. I mean, I don't rest on any laurels, but what I do is I pause and I remember how hard it was to get here, and how fortunate I am to have made it this far. And I'm working with hundreds of collaborators around the world to make this come true, this idea that we can really treat aging and prevent deterioration. So I'm blessed. I have an app on my phone that I've helped engineer.
What's that?
It's called Lua, L-U-A. And
what is that?
Well, it's a little company that we bought in New York, and nurses and dentists use it to pass medical information around, but we use it to share information between scientists around the world and coordinate activities between companies that I've
amazing.
started. Yeah. So I think I mentioned to you that I've started a few companies. What I'm trying to build are companies that are the 21st century version of a pharma company that is actually has a decent reputation in the world. I think it's pharmaceutical companies, whether it's deserved or not, have a pretty bad rap. I'm trying not to fall into that trap, but I'm also trying to use 21st century technology to not become too bureaucratic as well within the organization. And that's what the Lua app offers us.
You were also talking, I don't know if you could talk about this before the podcast, about how you have to make sure you have zero conflicts of interest.
Yeah, it's hard. So I don't sell any supplements. I don't endorse anything, no products. But if you look on the internet, if you Google David Sinclair and NAD or aging, you'll see that people put my name and my face all the time on their websites, and I get questions every day. Every morning I wake up, which product are you endorsing? And so I have to be extremely careful.
So do you have to have a lawyer contact those companies and tell them to take your name down?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fair amount of money always sending out cease and desist letters, but I have to do it. My reputation is everything. And I also want to be able to have opinions on these molecules without someone accusing me of doing it for profit.
That's what I would think would be critical, because if anybody could point to that and say, hey, he endorses this because he's making money.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what would be, that would be the thing that, I mean, especially because most people aren't going to do real research and develop a nuanced understanding of your work and what you're doing and what it means and how long you've been studying it. They go, oh, he's doing it because he's making money. I'm done. You know?
Right. Well, I've made a fair amount of money in my life. My first company, even though I wasn't the major shareholder, was sold for north of $720 million. So that money I'm not immune to, but I do reinvest almost all of it. Actually, all of it, my wife will tell you, into new ventures to change the world. So the Lyme disease company and the MIB 636 company, Metro, these are funded initially by me. Now, the conflict arises because I'm studying these molecules in the lab, and I'm on the board of directors and advising these companies as chairman, vice chairman. The only way around that as a scientist that we have as our defense is we disclose everything. So initially, I would disclose it to the government and to Harvard. All scientists have to do that. But I've gone a step further just to try and be ultra transparent with the public. And so I have a website. If you go to my lab's website, you'll see everything that I do, and hopefully that's protection from being accused of being biased. But what I definitely do in my lab is I say to the students, if you get a whiff that I'm doing anything biased, I wouldn't do anything consciously, but maybe there's some unconscious bias. Let me know, let the university know, and we'll be fine. But I've been doing this for 25 years. I think I'm pretty good at putting a wall between the two. And the other thing that I want everybody to know is, in the lab we do very basic research. We try to understand the fundamental reasons why we age and how to reverse it. The companies are more worried about how we're going to do a clinical trial, which is very different worlds, so they don't overlap much.
Now, when you want to bring something to try or something to the market, or you want to try something on people, what's the process? Like, say if you have some sort of a molecule that you want to try out on people, what is that process?
So it's a few years of often making a better molecule, but let's say you've done that work. Now you spend a year testing it on at least 2 different species, usually a rodent, a mouse, and a dog. But you try to do everything you can before that to make sure it's not going to be unsafe. Testing it on cells and other things that are not living, or at least don't feel anything. But the FDA, Food and Drug Administration of the US, requires if you're going to make a drug, you have to test it on at least 2 different species. So that's what you do. And then you go into what's called phase 1, which is safety testing. It takes 1 to 2 years. Phase 2 is what we call efficacy, which is does it really work potentially? So you test that on 50 to 100 people. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Most things fail. If it looks good, then you go into phase 3, which is $50 to $200 million worth of experiments, testing it on hundreds of patients. And if that goes well, then you apply to the FDA to be licensed to sell a drug.
So the amount of money that it must cost to bring something to a market, you just open your mouth like, oh.
It's hard.
Must be staggering.
It's staggering to raise that much money, and that's one of the reasons that these big numbers come up. Often we have to tap the public markets to be able to afford it. 'Cause a typical drug will cost in hundreds of millions of dollars. Some drugs have failed after $700 million investment.
Oh.
Yeah, but look at the upside. If we're successful at having a drug that treats aging, we'll treat a disease like diabetes first, but then it could become the best-selling drug of all time if it's proven safe. Who wouldn't want to have a drug that could protect them from all these major diseases?
Yeah, but how much would something like, you'd have to sell it for so much money to make up for all the research money, right? Is that how it works?
That's how it usually works, but for the first time I'm in control of many of these companies, and I have a large say in them, at least. And I as an individual, am pledging that we won't do that. We're not going to put our prices up to what the market can bear. This is a gift to the world, and so that's a very different approach, and that's one of the reasons that I've, in large part, used my own money to do these things, so I can have that say and do what's right for the planet.
So when you do that, how will you decide how much something costs? Based on the ability to just maintain a company?
Well, yeah, we have to be profitable, otherwise it all goes away.
Right.
But not to the point of extortion. No, there's a nice middle ground. And
Right. You don't want to be like that guy that went to jail for the AIDS drug. What's that asshole's name? You know that kid? You know who it is.
Oh, Shkreli.
Yeah, that guy.
Martin Shkreli.
Yeah.
No, I have a very different view, and I'm hoping that we'll have a new type of pharmaceutical company emerging out of what we're doing.
That's amazing, right? Because pharmaceutical drug companies are always thought as being the devil. Meanwhile, they're responsible for so many things to keep people alive as well. But because of the fact they're connected to things like OxyContin and fentanyl and things that kill people, and it's been proven that there are certain unscrupulous drug companies that have pushed things out there that they know have negative effects because they knew they could profit from it.
Right. Well, not everybody's ethical, but as long as I have a say in these companies, they will be ultra ethical.
You got to make sure that you stay alive. They're going to try to take you out, bro.
Well, yeah. I don't know about that, but
take you out and take control of the company.
I've
found those profits.
I found like-minded investors for the first time.
That's amazing too. I mean, how have you managed to cultivate that?
Relationships. It's harder than going with a pitch to a capitalist, but it's mainly meeting the right people. I want to see that they're on board too. I don't want to just have somebody who's out to make a profit.
Right, but you still can make a profit.
Oh,
still
we
be
have to.
profitable, but don't go crazy.
Right.
Right. Help the world.
Yeah, and so we just recruited to one of the boards of the company someone from a consumer company, which is a strange choice, right? But this is a person who's done right at that company for the world, a company that used to make just some consumer products that weren't healthy, and he turned that around. And that's the kind of person I want to work with, who cares about the planet more than they care about the ultimate profit.
But that's awesome, man. Listen, keep me in the loop. I want to know what's going on, and I'm gonna try all these things that you said. So I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna buy some NMN. I'm gonna buy some resveratrol. I gotta find a quack that's willing to prescribe me metformin. We'll talk later. And then the other stuff, the SRT 2104, that stuff. Where would one get that?
That's experimental. That's probably the hardest one to help you with.
Need to pay somebody off. Anything else I need to know
Pay
about?
somebody off. Jesus.
Is that it?
Have you had your
NR?
genome done?
Just 23andMe, basically. You know, I haven't. Is there more extensive versions of it than that?
There are. I mean, there are a few $1,000 to do your whole genome. We could
Mhm.
do that, but I don't think you'll learn a lot more. Mainly because we're ignorant as to what the other stuff's doing.
Right. It was pretty interesting, though. You know, as far as finding out about my ancestry and where my relatives come from.
Yeah, it's a good start. I learned some really interesting things too about my origins, and I'm carrying cystic fibrosis gene or whatever. But what's cool is now we're merging. You can merge that data with the inside tracker data, and have this ultimate,
Dutch
personal
London
angel for
Street.
health that will
Yeah.
hopefully one day be on all of us. That we've got the personal tracking device. It'll tell us if there's something going wrong. If you've got a cancer cell detected, go get that eliminated. It's crazy these days. We have to wait till there's actually a tumor that's making you sick before you actually go to the doctor.
An actual issue. Well, now I know why you're so excited about the future. So you have an inside track on this.
Yeah, front row seat. I'm glad to have shared a little bit with your listeners.
Oh, thank you. I really, really appreciate it. Tell the listeners and the viewers what your website is.
Oh, I just have a Harvard website, but I will be. I'll tweet about this. I'm launching a website for a book that I plan that I'm writing now, and it's going to come out later this year. We hope.
When it comes out, come on back.
Would love to. Give you an update.
Thank you, David. Really, really appreciate it. That's it. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody. This is my Vario, Holmes. This guy talking to a wall? The fuck? It's not right. No. No.
He was a close friend of Christopher Hitchens, so we speak about Hitch, and we cover much else. All I can say is that if you take even a fraction of the pleasure in Stephen's company that I did, you will enjoy the next 2 hours. And now I bring you Stephen Fry. I am here with Stephen Fry. Stephen, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Sam, it's a pleasure. Long-held ambition finally realized.
Oh, nice, nice. Well, yeah, that's most mutual. First of all, I mean, in preparing for this, and in just looking at, I mean, normally my experience is, you know, I invite someone on whose work I have absorbed because they've written one book or two books. I look into your bio, and there is such a profusion of creativity. It is just ridiculous. You are a comedian, a writer. You've both written nonfiction and novels. You are a presenter of many different things. You are a voiceover artist. I just started listening to your Sherlock Holmes. I believe my daughter has listened to your voice more than most through Harry Potter. How do you think of your own creative output? I mean, what is one of your identities more locked up in one of these bins than another, or do you just float freely between them all?
No, it's a good question, and I'm not quite sure of the answer. On any given day, I might give a different response, but generally speaking, I cleave to the truth that writing is the thing that gives me the deepest satisfaction. And indeed, the highest highs, you know, the most extreme feelings of whatever that creative impulse is. It doesn't mean that what you're writing is good, but the feeling you get from a sense of achievement in writing is the most. It's bigger than the burst of applause on the stage or anything like that. But where it all comes from, I have no idea. My current theory is greed, essentially. I've accreted a lot of material that I've made and done in the same way that my body has accreted a lot of fat, because I'm very greedy. I'm eating a lot, and the result is you'll get fat. And if I'm greedy to write, to perform, to try all kinds of different things, and so in the end you have a subcutaneous layer of material that you can't quite believe. It does surprise me I've done so. And I think, again, without sounding over paradoxical, maybe a result of having no particular talent. I think if I were really smart, if I was smart enough to be an academic philosopher or a literary professor or something, I would have stuck to that. If I had any musical gift, I would have embraced that. If I really felt that I was a supreme actor rather than, I would have stuck to finding good roles to play in films and TV rather than just sleeping So it's the advantage of being a jack of all trades and master.
All right. Well, you either lack self-awareness, or you're guilty of false humility, or some combination of the two. And
guilty of Britishness. I'm sure we'll come to.
Yeah, we will come to it. Yeah, no doubt. So as an actor, as a comedic actor, has Hugh Laurie been your most frequent collaborator, or?
Yes, we met at university when we were both in our late teens, early 20s, and instantly hit it off. I have described it before as like falling in love. I mean, non-sexual or even bromantic way, although there was a bromance, we were best friends, I guess. It was just an instant collaborative and creative fitting and meshing. Somehow we just had the same sense of humour, as much as anything. I think, especially when you're young, because the young are very unforgiving, very knowledgeable, the older. We absolutely agreed on what we hated in comedy. And I think you'll find that amongst adolescents and late adolescents, when they're in a garage band. It's as much they're doing this to piss off fans of X, Y, or Z style of music that they just hate. That's what powers the young.
Can you disclose your hatreds, or would you be trampling on the reputations of friends? And
the obvious. I think actually, I mean, we were quite, we'd like to think, quite advanced. I mean, we used to write sketches in which we never performed because they were almost too. We felt people weren't as annoyed as we were by the cliche of the stand-up comedian. Even then, even back in the early 80s, it started being ways. I remember creating one who was an American stand-up who did this thing about being a drug dog sniffer, and how that would be the greatest job in the world, so that the stand-up comedian could be a dog, and then could do sniffing, because I thought it was such a crap, cheap, obvious, pathetic. Since that 10 years later, I've seen comedians doing that same material. Hey, wouldn't that be a great gig?
Succeeded, yeah.
Can you imagine? You're a sniffer dog, for God's sakes? Yeah. You go, what? How is that funny? How isn't that the most base, pathetic? I mean, if someone can do it as a vague remark in a saloon bar in the evening, it is not worthy of professional comedy. And I suppose Q and I had a very high doctrine of what comedy should be. It should surprise and be unlike anything you'd ever heard before.
Now I've seen it all.
Each generation will want to tear away what they see as the cliches and the sort of cookie cutter approaches of the generation before.
Do you feel that comedy does not age as well as many other products of creativity? Because I'm always mortified to go back to something I thought was hilarious, only to find that not only is it deeply unfunny, but I hate my former self for having found it as funny as I did.
I do know it. Embarrassment is the word which we may come back to, and I think there are some sort of golden jewels of comedy that you seem never to age. I mean, I played to a godchild of mine not long ago, Bob Newhart, doing his driving lessons at Walter Raleigh. They still are just rock solid pieces of work. Partly because I guess they slightly suggest a sort of Mad Men era of guy in a suit with a cigarette standing on a stage being kind of easy. But other than that, they don't really date. Whereas some early Steve Martin that I thought was the greatest comedy I ever heard, do you think, well, that wild and crazy guy isn't quite as wild and crazy as I thought he was.
Right.
And maybe that's as it should be. And not only that, of course, comedians age. And I do think certainly sketch comedy, dressing up as a bishop or a lawyer or a judge or something, is funnier when a young person does it. It's a bit like the school. It's a bit like doing an impression of your school teacher.
Right.
And when you're actually old enough to be a judge or a bishop, it's character acting. It isn't quite the same as the sort of Pythonesque. The wonderful thing about seeing Python playing brigadier generals and bishops and things is that they're still in their 20s.
Yeah. So I only met Hugh once, very briefly, but he seems like an extraordinarily nice guy.
Yeah, he came see you.
Yeah,
he's a big admirer of yours.
he came to the event I did with Steve Pinker.
That's right.
And so that was great to meet him. So you and I met at Hitch's memorial. I'm surprised it took so long for us to meet because we were in similar circles for a while as voluble atheists. But
I was the groom to the Four Horsemen.
Yeah, that's right.
Or the ostler, just sort of holding the reins.
Yeah.
Off you go, sirs. You go and gallop off and spread the news. I'll be back here with a point for you when you're on your way back.
Well, yeah. So I should probably flag that at the outset here. So the nominal pretext for our conversation is that we're releasing the book version of the conversation, the Four Horsemen conversation that Hitch, Richard Dawkins, Dan Dennett, and I had in 2007, which was recorded happily. Really was recorded as an afterthought. We almost did it. We just got together in Hitch's apartment and
Boston Bruins.
Yeah. And I was surprised to realize that was actually the only conversation the four of us ever had. It's counterintuitive even to me, but, knowing my own life, but I'm sure it will be counterintuitive to the people who hear this. And so we refined the transcript of that conversation, and then each wrote introductory essays, and you were generous enough to write a foreword to it. And so that's coming out in, I believe, March. Obviously, it's available on Amazon now for pre-order, and we're shamelessly plugging this here. All the proceeds go to the Richard Dawkins Foundation for Reason and Science, which I believe is now joined at the hip with the Center for Inquiry.
It is indeed. They very kindly gave me an award at Las Vegas this year. So
nice.
I went to meet, but they're fused as one body.
Well done.
And it's worth remembering that at that time, you four were characterized as the new atheists. There was this idea of a new atheism, a rather more intellectually rigorous, open, free-thinking, unafraid way of addressing secularity, humanism, and the burdens and torments that religion was imposing on the world. And 2007 isn't that long ago, and yet we have to remember that's the year the iPhone came out.
Right.
The year Twitter came out. This is a lot has changed since then, and it's fascinating to hear and watch you four talking about the world and wondering whether this has been made irrelevant by the rise of social media.
Whoa, Nelly.
Actually, one finds that, as I think I say in the introduction, that talking about religion and the dangers of accepting religion or being bound by religion or allowing religious doctrine to inform policy and to be sort of unquestioned in government and the world, that the dangers of that are as apparent now as they were then, and they actually leach outside, and things become a subset of religion in a way that is just as important. The same kind of heresies and blasphemies, no longer pertaining to God and Jesus and Allah, but pertaining to gender politics and to all kinds of other issues now. And we're still in the same position of thinking, gosh, there are still inquisitions, there are still utter defays. You know, that you see people falling, tumbling, disgraced because they've said something heretical, or foolish. And it's actually greater now than it was in 2007. The power of religion was still strong then, and the church, and particularly the Roman Church, but also evangelical Christianity in this country, the United States, where we're speaking, was on the rise. The Tea Party and all those things were beginning to happen. But
I wouldn't count religion out just
No.
yet. I think, I mean, we see the pendulum keep swinging, but yeah, you're right to see the parallel with this new orthodoxy of political correctness, which was, has always been a term and a concept, at least for the last few decades. But this is really a front on which Hitch is so dearly missed. I mean, I'm more than 100 occasions, I'm sure I have thought, man, wouldn't it be great for Hitch to respond to this this horror that just appeared. I'll get to the free speech stuff. Actually, I just want to reference something that you wrote in your forward to the book, which caught my eye now that I've spent some time in the mindfulness minds producing a meditation app. You wrote in your description of me, you described me as being, quote, proficient in forms of meditation that an Englishman of my caste finds incomprehensible and deeply embarrassing. I can't even say the word mindfulness without blushing.
And it's true. And now, of course, I'm in the terrible problem, Sam, that I'm hearing your voice because I have subscribed. You kindly showed me how to subscribe to your waking up course of meditation and mindfulness, and I've subscribed to it, and I've been obediently following through. And your voice now has a very special place in my head, because it's that irritating voice which you're fully aware of. You flagged this, that just as one's mind is beginning to spin off into a nothingness or whatever it is, that as one concentrates on one's breathing and obeys the instructions you're giving, there's a nice silence and there's an inhalation and an exhalation. Then, damn it, your voice comes in again and plucks one up. And as you're aware, it's something one's got to get used to, because my instinct is simply to fall asleep. The moment I start concentrating on my breathing, I'm falling asleep. And I know meditation and sleep aren't the same thing.
No, both are good, but they're distinct.
Yes, they are indeed. But I'm very fascinated by this, and fascinated by your role in this, because, yes, I am embarrassed by words like mindfulness, because I'm not quite sure what they mean, and that's an embarrassment. It gives me awkwardness. It's perhaps a kind of similar word, quite synonymous.
But it's
I
not
even came across willfulness the other day. Which made me laugh a great deal.
I haven't heard that one. No, that embarrasses even me. Yeah.
And one used to use the word to be mindful, to be aware, and so awareness is, as we know, is an Anglo-Saxon version of conscious. So we're talking about consciousness, awareness, heightened consciousness. I remember having a big row with John Cleese once about that. He nearly stalked out of a restaurant because I genuinely said to him, I don't understand how you can have levels of consciousness. What are they? What is a higher level of consciousness? Does it mean I'm seeing the red as redder, or hearing the music more keenly, or understanding a situation more accurately, with greater acuity? What are these levels? And I'm a very, very empirical person, and I love to see how things are true. And with mindfulness, let me just be a devil's advocate.
Sure,
I'm not going to attack you. I've got great value already out of your course, and I'm finding it fascinating. But I think we all know that brain training games have been found to have zero applicability as far as actually improving the brain is concerned. they might make you slightly better at the game you're training in. So,
Yeah.
for example, whether it's a crossword or it's a memory game or something, you're better at the crossword and better at the memory game. There may be some slight advantage in delaying forms of dementia by playing these games, which again, that makes rational sense, but there may be empirical evidence, epidemiological evidence that works. But I'm puzzled to think that you make claims for meditation, for example, that it has cognitive effects. I went documentary series going around America. I remember when we were in Iowa. We went to this town in Iowa, which is owned by Transcendental Meditation.
Right.
At the university. I went to interview them. They covered me in electrodes and tried to battle me with science about alpha. You would say theta.
Yeah.
Theta in English. But waves, and I'm aware of this. That you can be in a position of such concentration and relaxation at the same time that you can probably think of the top of your head 1,000 uses for paperclip, which are creative and amusing, which someone who's trying too hard wouldn't be able to. It's a bit like the salmon. A live salmon is what an idea is, what a thought is. If you try and clutch it, because it's alive, it's wet, it slips out of your grasp. Hold it right. And that's what I know. Some of the claims of meditation are that they allow this simultaneous relaxation and concentration, and I think that's it's good, and I like the idea of it. But I've always been propelled by, as I say, by greed, and by ambition, and by all the sort of darker sides of kind of lust and awkwardness and embarrassment, as I said, that drive one to a fascination with things, and the very torment and difficulty of the human mind and its need for things and its greed for things has been for me what energizes and what makes me who I am. And I've always had this terrible fear of almost anything, whether it's a pharmaceutical or psychoanalytical, psychotherapeutic, or to do with meditation. I've seen it as a kind of zombifying, a kind of taking the edge off my mind. I want my anger. The 7 deadly sins to me are the 7 deadly propellants, or the fuel that get me forward in life. And I know that's nonsensical, and I know that
No, it's not nonsensical at all. There's truth to many of those claims. I think let's take the first piece. So yeah, the research on the benefits of training, even forget about just mental training. This is even true of physical training. Suggests that you get better at what you train, very specifically, and in many cases there's much less of a transfer effect than you'd expect. And this can be true even of physical training in a gym. It's like you get stronger in precisely the ways in which you exercise, and people who could be just hulking with muscle and look like fantastically strong athletes, if you put them in a paradigm that has to be working the same muscle groups, but it's not the way they train, they're not nearly as impressive as they are.
Hence cross-training and
exactly. That's why people mix it up endlessly to be very well-rounded athletes. And the same is true of the mind. So as you say, if you do these brain training games that work, some aspect of working memory, say, well, you get better at that particular task, but it doesn't transfer into the rest of your intellectual life, or at least there's no evidence that I'm aware of that it does at this point. And we should also just acknowledge that meditation can mean many different things. There are different types of meditation, and so people can be training different things under that guise. But with mindfulness, what you're training is the very thing you want more of, arguably, once you understand how it can function in the economy of your emotional and cognitive life, which is you're becoming more aware of the dynamics of your own mental suffering. Just the way in which being captured by thought moment to moment is leaving you hostage to whatever the contents of those thoughts are. And once you learn there's some modicum of mindfulness, you actually see there's a choice between being lost in thought, and by lost I mean thinking without even being dimly aware for those moments or minutes or hours that you're thinking. It's very much like being asleep and dreaming, right? You're just ruled by your thoughts. and then you're just laid bare to whatever emotional and behavioral implications are there. So you're angry, you're sad, you're saying the life deranging and relationship deranging things you say as an angry or sad person to your spouse or whoever. And mindfulness simply gives you the ability to, if nothing else, choose how long you want to be angry or sad for, really. Because
Yes.
like you can just punctuate that wheelworks of reactivity and pause, if only for a few moments. And those pauses can be enormously beneficial. Now, to your point about, I guess, classically negative emotions being a source of creativity and energy, I think that's true for many of us some of the time. But I think it's easy to either just
Wait,
in a
what?
delusional
Oh, you
way
fucking
make a virtue
cocksucker.
of necessity there. I mean, those of us who are ruled by negative emotion
Yo, Holmes.
are finding some silver lining.
That
to
really
them,
hurt?
Right.
Whereas mostly they're just a source of suffering that would be great to get rid of. I mean, if you could put on one hat, which
I think
would
my arm is
allow
broken.
you to feel the optimum motivational component of, one, positive emotions that you're not tending to feel, and two, you could titrate your negative emotions just to like their creative optimum, but then not suffer whenever you didn't feel like suffering, right? If there's some happy balance there, you might understand that very few of us find it just by accident. Because like, if you can't be mindful, if you can't notice the next thought arise and capture your conscious
Yes.
life for moments or minutes or hours, you are simply living out the consequences of your past conditioning and your, just who you were yesterday. You're like, there is actually no choice to make. Whereas if you train this particular skill, again, the awareness of the process and an ability to step back can give you another degree of freedom. And if it is just, listen, it's good to be angry for the next 10 minutes because that's how I'm going to write this scene, well then use it that way.
Yeah. Yes, and I wouldn't want to overstate the values of what we tend to call negative emotions.
It was not very nice to stomp on people when they're already
I
hurt.
suppose I remember once I was filming years ago, and
That's kind of rude.
Take your money.
No, it's kind of rude to do that.
Take your
and
money.
She looked, and in that very Maggie Smith way,
Nah,
she
Holmes,
looked
it's
at me,
mine.
she said,
But
"Don't
you can
you
have
ever
it."
Get bored. And it was a sort of funny remark, but I
Take your all to your money.
obvious, profound to my children.
Nah, Holmes, it's mine. That's why it's called my money.
Into that cow for
I don't know if you understand the word mine, but it's mine.
absolutely distraught with boredom. The idea that all we have to do is haul these calories into our interior, cropping grass, never stopping, always standing.
Alright, Holmes, I'll see you later, okay?
Bits of rain fall on you, and then you wander around.
Okay, do take care.
Great wind, and then you drop a cow pat, and then you move on. That's your day. There's no books, there's no television, there's no conversation, there's no imagining. Haven't they though achieved the absolute height of mindfulness? They're concentrating purely on being a cow. They're achieving their cowness 100% of the time. What it is when you're a human is that we are constantly feeling we're falling short of what we should be. That a man's reach should exceed his grasp, or what's a heaven for? Browning rather wonderfully put it.
Yeah.
We're constantly, there's something else up on the hill. It's both mad, and we know it's mad, because whenever we get to the top of the hill, we want another hill to climb to. And Alexander wept when he saw there were no more kingdoms to conquer.
Yeah.
Phrasing.
Yeah.
But at least I'm not a cow, And yet we
I think,
look.
didn't Caesar also weep when he contemplated how much Alexander had conquered?
Yes, exactly. Oh, there's always going to be envy as well. But, and at their best, you look at an animal. I always think of the Amazonian tree frog I once encountered, and its face was it's like the face of someone you fell in love with when you just briefly glanced them getting onto an underground train and never saw them again for the rest of your life, but you always know they were the one, And this tree frog was standing, with an arm on one branch and an arm on another, legs open, with an enormous grin on its face. And I remember thinking, you don't, as a tree frog, you never wake up in the morning thinking, was I a good tree frog yesterday? I let myself down, I let my family down. Oh, I'm going to have to apologize to someone tomorrow morning. We can be pretty sure they don't think that. What they are is 100% of the time fully realized as a tree frog. They fully achieve their destiny, and we don't. We never do. And if I met someone who had, I would just think they would just sound like some joke, smiling Buddhist who always just gave me the truth in reverse all the time. You must not sit down on the sofa. You must let the sofa stand up on you. And bugger off. I'm not interested. Go away. Don't talk nonsense. And that we're actually annoyed by placidity, by the cow in the field. When we meet it amongst humans, we think, come on, where's the juice, the bite, the vinegar, the fun, the snap? And again, I am definitely being devil's advocate here. I'm not saying that I genuinely don't disparage these ideas of mindfulness, and I'm fully aware that unhappiness in its wider forms, as we all know, the epidemiology on suicide and self-harm that is sweeping our culture is huge. Although, again, there's a lot of misreading of those data. WHO will tell you that there is no higher incidence of depression in the so-called developed world than there is in the undeveloped world. But actually, it's pretty even.
Interesting. I feel like we've been propagandized with another message recently.
Exactly, that we must be guilty, and because we live in an emotionally constipated, difficult, bad, awful culture that needs released into a nice, sweet world of friendliness and empathy. And I agree with that. But then I see empathy as coming from exactly things like embarrassment. Embarrassment are a result of empathy. You're embarrassed for other people when you see them making a mistake. Because embarrassment, there's one's own shame, pudeur, whatever word you want to use, that one can feel about one's naked state, one's desires, all the things that we're ashamed of inside, the primal genesis. We were naked and we were ashamed, we say to God. But there's the real embarrassment is the embarrassment we feel for other people. I think it's a form of real empathy to feel awkward about others. That's why I can't watch any reality TV. I'm just
mortifying. Yeah.
I'm not there seeing people putting up, even if they're happy or clearly believe they are and think they've triumphed. I just want to weep.
Yeah.
It's strange. I can't explain.
I have a problem watching ice skating.
Oh.
But the failures in ice skating I find more painful than anywhere in athletics, because the mismatch between what was gracefully being accomplished a moment before and what happens when they splatter all over the ice.
Yes,
it's just ghastly. That's it. But do you know Paul Bloom's work on empathy?
I've heard of it, but I don't know it.
Yeah, maybe we'll touch that in a second, because it's fascinating. To come back to your point about the cows, the mindful cows, no one who studies mindfulness or who gets deep into the practice thinks that mere placidity, and certainly not bovine placidity, is an exemplar.
It's not very nice to hit my car.
And it's
like
actually a misunderstanding.
Expensive to fix,
for a long time while one's practicing. It's not really passive. There's something very active about
oh shit, Holmes, that light hit my car. Yo, but sorry if
aware of the actual
I ran into you. I'm sorry.
Experience in a way that you're tending not to be in every other moment. I mean, the moment where you're consumed by thought, where your reach is exceeding your grasp, tends to be a moment where you are actually not. Your attention is bound up by thought and reactivity and prejudice, and in ways where you're not actually cognitively and emotionally available.
Oh my god!
All kinds of other ways that you could recognize.
I'm literally dead.
And the rewarding nature of if you could inhabit that band of consciousness long enough. So I mean, just like socially, like when you are in the mode of your ambition in relationship to other people, there are all kinds of experiences you're not having with other people that if you could have them, you might recognize they're actually preferable, right? So like when you're ambitious, when there are many things you desire, you walk into a room with a bunch of other people and they're beginning to function like props in your world, where you either have to get around them, you have to use them, they all have kind of instrumental value. If somebody's incredibly wealthy, that may be relevant to you. If you're a fundraiser, or you have something, if that completes part of the puzzle of your own ambition, you begin to see people in ways which are, again, instrumentalizing of them, and it makes you unavailable to actually connect in ways that you would otherwise connect if your attention were free of your own desire.
Can I do a bit simpler in a way? I mean, if you're talking about body-mind or body-brain, and obviously that's a whole thorny issue about brain and mind, but let's just say for the moment they're roughly the same.
Yeah,
thing.
sure.
If someone's been to the gym, if someone has body fullness, if someone runs and goes to the gym and is brilliantly trained and very fit, I can see it straight away.
Yeah.
And what's more, I can go upstairs with them, next to them, and I'm puffing at the top of the stairs and they aren't. There's so many obvious signs of their superiority and of the achievement that their training has given them. It's just apparent.
Yeah.
Now, can you say to me that we can have a random test in which I meet 20 people and I will be able to see straight away which 10 of them have had mindfulness training and which 10 haven't? If they're just a random bunch of people, is there some equivalent to that? My God, look at what they can lift. Look how fast they can go up the stairs without getting out of breath. Look at what their balance. Look at the physical achievement they've made through all this training. Can I see that?
Well, in the extreme,
or is it one only comparing it with oneself?
Well, the comparison to oneself, provided one does enough training, that can be, in the end, all the comparison
And that's
one
what
needs.
matters.
I mean,
Yes,
that can
of course,
be
I see that.
especially
But I just
convincing,
wondered, just purely as a
I would argue it's a false standard. I mean, the truth is, in the extreme case, yes, it can become apparent. You can meet extraordinary examples of stability in this kind of practice or related practices like loving kindness practice, where you meet someone who's just trained up this one style of relating to other people, where they've been meditating for years on wishing others, strangers, anyone, all conscious beings actually, to be free of suffering.
A kind of just giving out of.
So there's just a kind of a surplus of good intention that you can feel.
And that's
from
something
these people.
that's not innate in their characteristic, but that they have trained themselves to.
And you can train. You can train it yourself. I mean, obviously there are pharmacological examples of these kinds of changes. Like people who take MDMA know what it's like for the span of 8 hours to feel. Have you ever done any psychedelics?
Yes, and you've only once had to take LSD for it to be with you for the rest of your life. It's the effect that it can have on one. All those Huxley kind of things about the doors of perception are lamentably true.
Let's talk about that for a second. So you've taken it. When did you take LSD?
Not for, I mean, decades ago, but I remember almost the entire. It was like over a weekend with some friends, and it was extremely profound and remarkable experience. And
was it extremely positive, or was it
It
mixed?
was positive. There was one
negative?
tiny moment when I was alone at one point where I got terribly afraid. The recursive image in my head that wouldn't go away. Brought out of that, but that was an important part of it. And I remember all the, I'm never quite sure the difference between them, but quiddity and hexity, that thisness and thatness of things, and you want to look at one's fingernail, see the fingernailness of the fingernail, and how extraordinarily fingernaily it was, and I felt as doing it that I would never lose that I would be able to bring back this way of looking at things, so that I could see the grain and the absolute whatness of them, and that was a very valuable and extraordinary experience, and it chimed with everything I'd read, and then continued to read from people like Huxley and I guess to some extent.
All right, so let me ask you. So imagine the most normative component of that experience, or the place in that experience where, if you could maintain that state of consciousness, you would say, okay, well, that's obviously more fulfilling, more drenched in clarity or meaning than the experiences I'm tending to have, say. Two things to notice about that. One is that there's not necessarily anything someone could have noticed about you from the outside that would have advertised that state of consciousness especially well.
No.
Right, so you would have just been sitting on a couch,
They might
staring at
notice
your
I was saying,
fingernail.
wow,
in this case.
slightly too much.
More
than I usually ever would.
Wow,
Yes.
this man likes his fingernails.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of wowing, but no, you're right. There's no other difference other than this absolute openness to the experience, especially of the senses. I mean, every one of them. So the coldness and the wetness of water in the mouth, and as well as this sight of flowers and all the cliches, which reminded me of my. I think we can all remember times, if we're lucky at least, in adolescence in particular, where we are become convinced in a quite solipsistic way that only we really see how beautiful a dawn is, or an animal, or a flower, or nature, or love, and that we are particularly privileged to have this access to the staggering beauty of everything. And it overwhelms us, and it's a very teenage thing, as a teenager, I didn't want to lose it. I was aware, it's a different sort of consciousness, a more intellectual consciousness, or one that had done a lot of reading, precocious kind of consciousness. I was aware that this would pass, that this was a phase.
Right.
I had read
Interesting.
enough autobiographies and spiritual
Yeah.
autobiographies of writers and
You
poets
wouldn't be a
and things to
teenager
know
forever,
that,
yeah.
that this would leave me, and I felt savagely that I never wanted it to. And of course, I always believed that art and music in particular, were pathways to retaining that.
Mm.
So, if I listen to a Schubert sonata or something, it's an instant access straight away to these profound feelings and revelations, this terrific sense of the beauty and the majesty and the glory, as well as the fear of the power of the way things are at an atomic level or at a great sort of huge natural level. You'll know it. Anybody
Yeah.
listening will know that.
Yeah.
We don't talk about it much because it's embarrassing, slightly, because it's
Yeah,
just sort
more-
of effusive
more for Englishmen, I think.
Yeah, it is,
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
is. Yes,
Yeah.
which is why I suppose they become poets. It's why Keats is so Keats and Shakespeare is so Shakespeare, because they have to find a way, because they're not allowed to talk like that in the pub.
So yeah, not to give a false impression here. What I'm saying about LSD is
Mm.
not that the experiences one tends to have on LSD are exactly like
No.
what the goal is of kind of sustained mindfulness, but there's a few lessons to draw there. One is that no matter how glorious that experience has
Yeah.
been for many of us who've taken those drugs, there's not necessarily an outward sign.
There's no physical aura
Right.
that says,
Yeah.
I see
Yeah.
you have taken LSD.
Yeah, and I mean, you
No.
can,
Yeah.
those of us who have related to people in those states recognize that if you interact with them long enough, you begin to see that like more or less vivid signs of that their state of mind is transformed. But it can be very subtle, and depending on how your attention is bound up and how you view other people, you may not notice anything out of the ordinary at all. But also the other point is that there's nothing that your brain is doing on LSD or any other drug that your brain in principle isn't capable of doing without those drugs. Because I mean, if you just look at the
Yes.
pharmacology of any drug, all a drug does is mimic the behavior of existing neurotransmitters or cause those neurotransmitters to be in the synapse longer or less long. There are not many levers in the brain for a drug to pull, and they're all part of the brain. So you can be fairly confident that whatever experience anyone has had on any drug, there's somebody somewhere who's had a very similar experience without any drug, right?
Yes.
Just whether
Oh,
they
absolutely.
based
And
on neurological
you've got to
injury
read
or
William Blake, which is why poets and mystics like that were so appealing to the first generation to discover drugs like LSD,
Yeah.
to the Timothy Learys and the Huxleys and so on, was because they thought people have been there before. They have pulled back this membrane, or they've entered this tunnel, and they've seen things that this drug is allowing me to do it now. They've done it through their own insight or their own ability to let go and whatever it might
Yeah.
be, or indeed their own discipline, their own craft. I mean, if to me, I remember when I first read the 4 words of Whitman as a teenager, which I couldn't understand as words, but which hit me like a lightning bolt. I sing the body electric. It's a famous line.
Yeah.
It's a cliche almost.
Yeah.
But to me,
It's
that did
redolent
everything
of
that
many acid trips. Yes.
Well, anything that an acid trip could do, but also a mindfulness experience or a meditation period, is I would stare at those words and my mind would go through, why do they have this effect on me? What is it meaning? Who am I connecting with? Who else feels like this? Who was this man? And by penetrating poetry or art or music, I'm getting all the benefits of mindfulness, but they're not solipsistic or egotistical, because they involve learning about this other person who's given it to me. Who was this Schubert? Who was this Wagner? Who was it doesn't matter who Jimi Hendrix or Duke Ellington. It doesn't matter what sort of art it is, but that you're actually learning. You're getting cultural, social history, racial history, European history, all kinds of incredible histories, as well as technique and craft of prosody and poetic writing and music and chord shifting, and how do all these things make me feel so extraordinary? And it's a full-on investigation rather
Yeah.
than sitting cross-legged,
Yeah.
looking at my omphalos
Right,
and wondering about myself. Because I've always felt this powerful, counterintuitive thing that the less one inspects oneself, the more rewarding it is to oneself. And
Right.
that's one of
Yeah.
my fears, if
Yeah.
you like, or embarrassments about meditation, is that it's a bit egotistical, it's a bit vain, and therefore not helpful.
Right.
Not that
Interesting.
there's anything wrong with being vain and egotistical, except
Well, no,
usually there is a lot wrong with
yeah,
it.
there is. No,
Yeah.
no, I would. Well, so again, I think that's a misapprehension of the project. First, I would say is that mindfulness is definitely not a surrogate for all of the other things you just mentioned.
No,
I mean,
and
it's
indeed
not
you
the
do
same.
mention that in your films and in your talks and
Right.
and so on.
It is just not. It's
Yeah.
not a replacement for being artistically creative or appreciating the creativity of others. I mean, those
Yeah.
are just separate things to do. Now, it's not incompatible with those things. You can be mindful and do all of those things, while being mindful. That's also true. You can, and I would argue that you'd be more appreciative of many of the products of your own creativity or others because you can actually pay attention because you're just not as distractible, right? So it is,
Yes.
the distraction is the enemy of everything we want to pay attention to, whether it's our own creativity, a movie we're trying to watch, a telephone call that we're on the phone with our mothers or whatever, and we're losing the train of her thought because we're multitasking.
Certainly you and I, and I bet most people listening would agree that if we could bottle